meeting of the Santa Barbara City Council to order. And please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Friedman. Here. Councilmember Dominguez. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Rouse. Councilmember Hart. Here. Councilmember Sneddon. Here. Mayor Murillo.
Here. And we have a ceremonial item, Madam Clerk.
Item number 1, subject World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Someone here to receive it? Heather Clark?
Thank you, ladies. Thank you. So today is World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Whereas every day 10,000 people turn 65 in the United States, and 1 in 10 older Americans experience elder abuse, neglect, or exploitation. And whereas older members of our community are vital contributing members of our society, and their mistreatment diminishes all of us. And whereas older adults who are socially connected and protected from harm are less likely to be hospitalized, less likely to go into nursing homes, and less likely to die prematurely. And whereas the International Network for the Prevention of Elder Abuse and the World Health Organization at the United Nations launched World Elder Abuse Awareness Day in an effort to unite communities around the world to raise awareness about elder abuse as a human rights issue. And whereas community organizations and small businesses are on the front line in the prevention of elder abuse, encountering people of all ages on a daily basis, and are in a position to recognize and intervene in instances of elder abuse. And whereas working together, we can build the social supports that can prevent this abuse and keep everyone safe as we age. And whereas the Elder and Dependent Adult Abuse Prevention Council of Santa Barbara County is hosting a prevention workshop on June 15th, 2018. Now, therefore, I, Kathy Murillo, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Santa Barbara, do hereby proclaim June 15th, 2018 to be Elder Abuse Awareness Day in Santa Barbara in honor of the men and women who endured the Great Depression, survived world wars, withstood change and adversity, and continue to serve as examples of aging gracefully. Here you go. And please introduce yourselves and say a few words for us in the public. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeannie West, and I am a member of the Elder and Dependent Adult Abuse Prevention Council of Santa Barbara County, and have been a member for about 25 years. I am doing a presentation at the Samarkand this Friday, June 15th, on prevention of elder abuse. And we're hoping to have 100 to 150 people attending that. It is a huge problem in our city, our state, and in the world, indeed, with billions and billions of dollars being stolen. So we hope that prevention is the #1 key to stopping this problem. Thank you so much for this proclamation. And Vicki Johnson.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Vicki Johnson with the District Attorney's Office. Thank you so much for this recognition of this very important day. And speaking on behalf of Joyce Dudley, she considers this a very critical issue in our community. We are actively working to educate our population about elder abuse. It is often unrecognized, hidden, and it needs to be brought to light. So thank you so much for this proclamation.
You're welcome.
Heather Clark, Detective, Santa Barbara Police Department. Madam Mayor and City Council, thank you so much for your recognition of this very important topic in our community, and we thank you very much for your support.
Thank you all. Thanks. Mr. Casey, are there any changes to the agenda?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay. We will go to public comment. And Phil Walker, you're first. Everyone has 2 minutes up at the microphone. There's a timer counting down there, so please keep an eye on that.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. I worked 4 months past 70, and, you know, Social Security told me, Mr. Walker, you must imagine yourself having to work forever. So, you know, on the east side, I get a lot of respect. I think it's this, and people check you out, and they see the shape you're in. So I've been a very fortunate fellow being able to work 35 years for the city and a lot of years before that, but it does keep you in shape. So keep doing your gardening too. It's good for the gut. One thing I wanted to say, I was walking on the west side and there was a parking median, and I'm pretty sure they are city property, the parking median. The guy was very creative. You know, he had rose bushes with some very fragmented rock, and it shows what can be done on the Montecito uplifts, the 60% gradient. You know what I'd do if I were in charge? I'd blast it, create a open pit mining scenario, or get not the Army Corps of Engineers, get the combat engineers in there, because what people need is an insurance for the next 1, 3, 5 years plus or minus. Those rocks that tend to flow down, they're very smooth, won't. So fragment them, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Cox is next, followed by Courtney Klein, and Anna Marie Gott will be the final speaker.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Mayor and City Council. I'm here again trying to convince the county and the city to put up rent control issues, because we have a lot of businesses closing on State Street. There was an article several weeks ago saying that the reason the businesses are closing is because the homeless are flying signs and other stuff. But I think it needs to be addressed and try to see if the homeless can go into these buildings to advertise for them, for the businesses, you know, and try to keep them in town. But I think the best thing to do is try to work on rent control, because a lot of businesses are closing. It doesn't have to do with the homeless. It has to do with the renter, the people who leasing in the buildings and everything else, property management and stuff. And I know that there's a lot of issue with trying to get rent control established in the city, but we need something to keep the businesses open. You guys are trying to be a tourist attraction. If someone has a favorite restaurant they like when they come to Santa Barbara and it's closed, then they get all upset and not happy. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Klein?
Morning, Madam Mayor, City Council. I'm here as well as Michael Cox because we have a list that has come from the homeless out on State Street, and they have seen things that need to be changed, and they are willing to give their input. And one of the things they have noticed is that a lot of us are being treated very badly by some people on the streets, and we don't really appreciate it that we're being harassed. We are willing to help however we can. We go up to people that are not doing what they're supposed to, and we tell them, this is what you need to do. If you're not flying, please don't panhandle. Fly a sign if you need to earn money, but don't do this. And we have a whole list of things that have been taken, if any of you would like to see the list. And we would appreciate any help for recovery, for help, more police officers on the street for recovery help. I'm taking classes right now to help others on the street because I used to do drugs, but I stopped myself, and I'm trying to help others out on the street, and we really need this extra help for those that don't have they get their cell phones taken away. What are they going to do if there's nobody there to make the phone call, to help them make that phone call for the help they need? Thank you.
Thanks. Did you want to leave that list
Yes,
with us?
I would love to.
Holly
This
can
list.
make a copy for you. Oh, okay.
I've got the list.
Thank you.
You can all make copies of it.
Thanks.
We have backup copies.
Ms. Gott?
Good afternoon. So there's two things actually I wanted to bring up today. The first is I read about the scooters, and I have a question for you guys. on April the 13th, you met with the Planning Commission and you looked at the future work efforts. What future work efforts are you going to delay because you now are going to implement a scooter ordinance? Why even have one? Why not let other cities be the guinea pigs and allow Santa Barbara to hold off for a year, enforce whatever issues that we have with people who own them now? That seems reasonable, beyond reasonable. You know, here are the high priority future work efforts, everything from the implementation of SB 35 to land development team fee studies. You also have amendments to Title 22 for historical design guidelines. You are also looking at a climate action plan update. Are any of these things less important? Is having a scooter ordinance more important, and especially allowing someone to get a permit after they've dumped 100 of them on State Street, even after you said that you didn't want them? The next thing is, as you know, I've been looking into the parking and benefit improvement area. I found a really interesting report that I thought you all might be interested in. There's a 2010 engineering report on parking. It specifically discusses the Canary Hotel. The Canary Hotel actually displaced about 174 low-income housing units. They've been using our parking structures at $35 an hour for valet parking. They were only permitted to actually have 53
Your
parking
time
places.
is up, ma'am.
And we're not following any of our covenants. We really need to do a better job at the city. Thank you.
That closes public comment, and we're going on to this consent calendar. Do you have items to read, Ms. Estrada?
Item number 2, subject introduction of ordinance consenting to the assignment and assumption of city loan agreement, deed of trust, and affordability control covenant from Phoenix of Santa Barbara to Path Point. Recommendation that council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara consenting to the assignment and assumption of a city of Santa Barbara loan agreement, deed of trust, and affordability control covenant from Phoenix of Santa Barbara, a California nonprofit public benefit corporation, to Path Point, a California nonprofit public benefit corporation, and authorizing the community development director to execute such documents as necessary. Item number 3, subject introduction of ordinance to finalize city funding to 813 East Carrillo Street, LP, in support of a new affordable housing project located at 813 East Carrillo Street, Johnson Court. Recommendation that council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara approving a loan agreement, deed of trust, and affordability control covenant with 813 East Carrillo Street, LP, and authorizing the community development director to execute such agreements as necessary. And item number 4, subject Police Management Association Memorandum of Understanding. Recommendation that council ratify the Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Santa Barbara and the Santa Barbara Police Management Association for the period of January 1, 2018 through December 31, 2019 by introduction and subsequent adoption of, by reading of title only, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara adopting the 2018 Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Santa Barbara and the Santa Barbara Police Management Association.
Thank you. Mr. Casey, does number 9 need to be read into the record? Okay. And I know we have some agreement on that. So I don't see any lights. If there's no further objection, we'll waive further reading, and I'll entertain a motion to move the consent calendar. So moved. Mr. from Hart, second from Dominguez. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we've moved the consent calendar forward. And what's next, Ms. Estrada?
That'll be item number 11, subject appointment of Sea Level Rise Adaptation Plan Subcommittee.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Mr. Casey, I'm sorry, we didn't report out from the ordinance committee, so we're going to go back to that item. Councilmember Sneddon, Chair of the Ordinance Committee.
Thank you. Ordinance Committee met today, and we decided to continue the item restricting the use and sale of expanded polystyrene products to consider a ban on plastic straws as well. So we'll be seeing that in a week and then bringing it back to council.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, now we're moving to number 11. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Melissa Hetrick. I'm with the city's planning division, and I'm the project manager of the Sea Level Rise Adaptation Plan. And with me today is Renee Brooks, city planner. The purpose of this hearing is to form a Sea Level Rise Adaptation Plan subcommittee and to appoint council members to that subcommittee. Just a little background, the city now is required to analyze sea level rise as part of coastal development permitting and environmental review under CEQA. Therefore, the 2013 safety element directed the preparation of a detailed sea level rise adaptation plan. For the last several years, the city has been undertaking a comprehensive update of its coastal land use plan, and that plan will be before you this summer for approval. The plan includes policies requiring the preparation of a sea level rise adaptation plan, and it also includes policies that address how sea level rise should be addressed in development review. In 2016, the City Council accepted grant funds from the California Coastal Commission for the Sea Level Rise Adaptation Plan. In February 2018, the City Council approved a contract with Environmental Science Associates for the Sea Level Rise Adaptation Plan. And since that time, we've been working on technical matters with ESA. The scope of the Sea Level Rise Adaptation Plan really begins with an updated vulnerability assessment, and this will look at the potential impacts of sea level rise and associated increases in frequency and extent of flooding, wave impacts, bluff erosion, and beach erosion in the city. We'll be looking at the timeframes of 2030, 2060, and 2100. The amount of sea level rise that we'll be considering will be based on state projections contained in the State of California Sea Level Rise Guidance. And the hazard modeling will be primarily based on a model developed by the USGS called Cosmos 3, which looks at not just worst case scenarios, but more probable scenarios for sea level rise. The assessment will look at impacts to private and public assets, including beach width, parks, private development. It will also include a robust economic and fiscal impacts analysis. The plan will then take a high-level look at the costs and benefits of adaptation strategies. It will identify triggers for implementation of these strategies. So, for instance, at 6 inches of sea level rise, we need to start rebuilding the breakwater or something, things like that. It will identify additional work that might be needed or monitoring that might be needed in the future. As part of the plan, we'll also take another look at the development standards and policies in the Coast Draft Land Use Plan and see if we need to update them based on the additional information in the adaptation plan. Any changes that are needed or policies that need to be implemented will be packaged into a local coastal program amendment that will come before you and then be sent to Coastal Commission. So the overall process for the plan involves input from a sea level rise adaptation plan subcommittee, technical review from a staff interdepartmental sea level rise team that already exists, consultations with the Coastal Commission, county, and other agencies, public outreach, and public workshops. The purpose of the subcommittee will be to provide input on public outreach and the social, economic, and political aspects of the plan. The plan will consider a number of trade-offs associated with adaptation strategies, and one of the tasks of the subcommittee will be to take a look at what the guiding principles of the city should be when considering adaptation strategies. The subcommittee will also review major deliverables and report back to the City Council and their respective commissions. We're anticipating that in spring 2019 we'll have a draft of the plan, and We're anticipating there to be about 6 or 7 subcommittee meetings between now and the summer of 2019. Staff is recommending that the subcommittee contains 7 members, 2 council members, 2 planning commission members, 1 harbor commission member, 1 parks and recreation commission member, and 1 water commission member. This is a little bit different than what was in your staff report. Based on input from Public Works, we've added 1 water commission member given the water and wastewater infrastructure that's potentially at risk. There is also an existing LCP update subcommittee that's been working on the comprehensive update to the coastal land use plan that includes planning commission members, harbor commission members, and parks and recreation commission members. And so we would recommend that those commissions consider appointing members that are already on the LCP update subcommittee onto the Seal of Arise subcommittee. So in summary, staff recommends that council form a Seal of Arise adaptation plan subcommittee, that council appoint 2 council members to the subcommittee, and that council direct the various commissions to appoint their own members to the subcommittee. And that's the end of my presentation, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from our council? Mr. Rouse?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What, as we go forward with the deliberations and whatnot, what model are we using? There's a fair amount of models. So there's one, I think UC Santa Cruz put out a few years back that we received a report on. Which model are we using as a template for determining what policy might be?
The best available science right now is a model that was just put out a year ago called Cosmos 3.0 that was developed by USGS. Adding on to that will be some data that Environmental Science Associates developed for the county as part of their coastal resiliency project. Those really are the most up-to-date models.
And so I assume that other communities, coastal communities, are doing this in concert, I mean, timing-wise and whatnot, for their LCPs.
Yes. And the advantage of using the USGS model is that the other agencies are also using that model, and it was meant to be used statewide by different cities and counties. So there's consistency in analysis.
Okay, thank you.
And my question is, we are waiting for a report on the local coastal plan update, right? That's coming in August. Okay. So it's to the council. If there's nominations or someone feels like they want to participate in this subcommittee, Ms. Snedden?
I would very much like to participate in the subcommittee. I'm not sure what process we're using, but
okay,
I'd like to.
Mr. Friedman?
I'd be interested as well.
Okay. And Mr. Dominguez?
I'd be interested just because of the large mileage of waterfront in my district.
That's a good point. So why don't we do it the way we do appointments to the advisory board? So we have 3 nominees, and everybody say they're 2. You don't like that, Mr. Rouse? I see you shaking. Thinking?
Yes, I was thinking.
Okay. So just go ahead and go down the line, and everybody picks their 2 to be on the committee.
Okay. Councilmember Friedman?
Myself and Councilmember Snedden.
So, point of order.
Oh, yes, sir.
You're using a new process for this appointment, not
I
the
think we've
normal
used
traditional
this process before. Mr. Casey, or how would you respond?
Madam Mayor, council members, it's up to you, whatever process you would want to do. You seem to be following a board and commission appointment process where you have nominees and then you vote, and if there's a majority vote. The other option would be to have someone make a motion and for 2 appointees and just vote on the motion. But I think it's really at council's discretion.
You object to the method then, Mr. Dominguez?
Well, what we've always done is gone in order of seniority. Even though I think the last 3 times I've raised the objection that we shouldn't do it that way, but
it's okay to be inconsistent if you like, but
I just hate to see the rules change when I'm applying for something. That's all.
So Councilmember Friedman and Snedden, they're equal in their seniority. So how would we do that? That's a challenge on that one. So whoever's older? No, I'm teasing. Can we go ahead and I'm using the mayor's prerogative to do the method that I had suggested.
Or ask, do either of you have waterfront territory in your districts? In other words, do you have constituents? Because normally you know your district better than you know other areas of the city, all other things being equal. So it would seem to make sense from a policy point of view.
I guess we're asking people now to promote themselves. Why should you be appointed? So go ahead, Ms. Sneddon.
I don't have waterfront in my district, but I do have a particular background in water sciences. I've worked with USGS models in the past, ModFlow. I've prepared models like that myself. It's openware. I don't propose that I would be using it, but I would be able to understand it. I'm on the Water Commission, which is another position that will be on. I'm not on the Water Commission. I'm liaison to the Water Commission, so I feel the communication with the Water Commission, City Council, and in Sea Level Rise would be advantageous. But I do not have any waterfront property in my district. I do? Oh, I do. Yes, I do. Of course I do.
So Channel Drive or?
Yes, I have East Beach, the zoo, and District 4 is quite large. Yes, it goes up on the Riviera, which sea level rise will not affect, and then down by the estuary, and I do have waterfront. But I wouldn't propose that would be the reason to have priority on the subcommittee, because I believe this is an issue that affects the whole city. So even though I have area in the district, I think it's more my background.
Okay. So, Mr. Dominguez, you've already said because you have waterfront in your district. Any other points you'd like to?
So I thought
up?
this was just the tiebreaker between the two non-senior people. You're suggesting we use a new policy today in how we pick council members to serve on committees?
I'd like to go ahead with the method that I had described, which was everybody gets to vote.
Right, and I'm just inquiring why you're picking a new method today.
It seemed like a good way to do it. That's how we appoint people to boards and commissions.
We never appoint council members this way.
Oh, okay.
You've been on council for 6 years, and every year you've done it a different way. So it's just, to me, I'm wondering why now, and I've expressed an interest and I'm the senior member, you wouldn't respect the tradition.
I might be ready to vote for you, but if you, I asked you to talk about why you think you should be on this particular committee. Ms. Sneddon is a scientist. She's made her case.
I just want to know which set of rules you're using before I engage in the process. That's all. I think it's a fair request.
Okay.
And why you're changing the rules up if you are going to change the rules. I think that's a fair question.
It seemed like the right thing to do right at this moment. So I'm just trying to get two people onto this committee. So.
I understand when you say it seemed the right thing, but why is it the right thing today when the last two times I suggested we try another method? Why is it right today? What's changed?
You know, I'm happy to reconsider if you feel so strongly about it. I'm good with that.
It's not really a feelings thing. It's just a consistency. If we've always done it one way, I don't know why you would change it spontaneously, particularly when in the past I've said, let's try it a different way, and you've rejected the approach that I suggested.
Well, can you answer my question, why you want to be on the committee? And
sure.
Then I'll make a decision.
I wanted to get the process first, but if you want me to go the other way, I'm happy to.
Please.
So I have 2 environmental law degrees. I studied environmental law at the University of California at Berkeley. And the reason I chose to study environmental law was growing up in California and doing a lot of outdoors activities and seeing the nature of industry and manufacturing and the harm that was taking place to the environment in California, particularly in Los Angeles, and having a desire to change how business was done in California to bring around a more environmentally conscious and friendly approach. And after I finished my law degree at UC Berkeley, I went to the University of Heidelberg because I wasn't satisfied with the knowledge I'd gained at the University of California at Berkeley, which was at that time, one of the only environmental law schools in the country, but definitely one of the best. So I went to the University of Heidelberg in Germany on a fellowship the Gold Fellowship and studied German and European environmental law and international environmental law. And a lot of that program related to how countries in Europe, where it's very fragmented, how they shared environmental resources and international resources. So including in Germany, the North Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, where you have a lot of countries who bound these bodies of water. And then subsequent to that, I've worked in environmental law. I ran a statewide environmental justice program that looked at how the costs of pollution are externalized onto populations that can't really afford it. And you see that when you talk about sea level rise globally, it's the poorest countries in the world who end up bearing the brunt of the economic and industrial development. So they don't get the economic advantages, they just bear the brunt of it. And you see that in Santa Barbara. The most economically disadvantaged communities in Santa Barbara share an overwhelmingly disproportionate share of the environmental burdens, the pollutions. So along the 101 freeway, the east side, you have pollutants being generated in the industrial area. And it's something that I've been trying to help change. I spent 3 years living in a country, the Netherlands, where they've actually reclaimed land. So they're not just allowing sea level rise to happen, they're actually pushing back and using technology and science. So that would be my pitch.
Very good. Mr. Friedman?
Well, I thought about joining this because for a number of reasons. One, I grew up here in, like Councilman Sneddon, and grew up here, so I know this area very well just from personal experiences. But in terms of public policy, when I worked at the county for then Supervisor Carbajal, I was staff lead on a number of environmental issues, including sea level rise. I worked on the county's plans. And at the time, in 2014, Supervisor Carbajal was appointed by President Obama to the local climate task force, the president's appointees, which was made up of 24 individuals from throughout the country, including 4 governors, if I recall, and county supervisors, and I was staff lead on that and worked on a number of those issues. And it was a presidential report that dealt a lot with sea level rise and other impacts. So I had a broad knowledge of not only what was going on locally, but nationally in the United States. And then also worked on a number of issues related to Beacon, their settlement master plan, and through the Beacon process, which comprises the city of Santa Barbara and our local South Coast partners, including the County of Ventura. So I have a background in local policy issues, and as far as my district, technically it does not have water, board of the water, but it is right on the county line of Arroyo Burro Beach, and there are a lot of impacts that affect the Allen Road neighborhood that are there that come with sea level rise. So it's right on the border there. So that's why I thought to put my name in the toss for this.
Okay, very good. Mr. Hart, oh, you turned your light off? Okay, so let's go ahead and vote with my method. With all due respect to Mr. Dominguez's request, can we go ahead and continue the roll call?
Councilmember Dominguez?
Well, okay.
I got Friedman.
Okay, you got Friedman's, okay.
Can you repeat the motion?
The motion is to appoint 2 council members to the Sea Level Rise Adaptation Plan Subcommittee and direct staff to have the Planning Commission, Harbor Commission, and Parks and Recreation Commission, and as well the Water Commission to appoint their own members to the subcommittee.
Well, we hadn't gone through that whole process yet. We were just appointing 2 people. And so the 3 candidates are Friedman, Dominguez, and Sneddon. And so pick 2 and please vote for yourself. That's what we do. Yeah.
I'll vote for myself.
You're going to do a bullet vote on yourself?
I'm
Can
not
you
sure
vote for 2?
Is that what you would like me to do?
Yeah, pick 2.
Okay.
Because there's 2.
Going with the rules as they're being made up here. Sneddon.
So Dominguez and Sneddon from you. Okay.
Mayor Potem Rouse?
Thank you. With all due respect to Mr. Friedman, I'll do Councilmember Sneddon due to her science background, and because Mr. Dominguez is likely to be involved in some of the LCP issues that go on in that district, I'll vote for Mr. Dominguez as well.
Councilmember Hart?
Friedman and Sneddon.
Councilmember Sneddon?
Sneddon and Dominguez.
Mayor Murillo?
Sneddon, Friedman.
to tie between Dominguez and Friedman.
Could I propose we nominate 3 council members?
Ms. Hetrick, how would that work if there were 3 council members on the?
That could be fine.
Okay, that's not going to make it an even number at that level, and you would have trouble coming to decision making?
No, it's really the subcommittee will be providing input, and that could be varied input. There's not consensus voting.
Okay, so that was a second. That was a motion by Dominguez and a second from Rouse. Any other discussion on sending all 3? Okay, all in favor of that? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, good. We have a good engaged community here. Now we need a motion for the rest of the recommendation. Mr. Dominguez, a second from Ms. Sneddon. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, that's unanimous, Ms. Estrada and Ms. Hetrick. Anything else you need from us? Okay, so we're moving on to number 12.
Okay. Item number 12, subject, public hearing and expansion of permit parking area F. Recommendation B, that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara expanding residential parking permit area F in the downtown area to include the 500 block of East Figueroa Street and the 1000 block of Riconada Road.
Mr. Garza, are you starting us off?
Yes. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, council members. Victor Garza with Downtown Parking. As part of our management of the the city's on-street parking supply is the management of the resident permit parking program. With us today is Sarah Clark, Parking Resource Specialist, that's going to update us on the process and the status of the residents' requests to include the 500 block of East Figueroa and Rinconada into the existing parking area F. Go ahead, Sarah.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and council members. So just to get started, we'll do a little bit of background on the program really quick. So the purpose of the Resident Permit Parking Program, or the RPP program, is it's a tool that the city can use to balance the needs of different interests in mixed-use areas when we're looking at on-street parking. This RPP program is completely governed by the municipal code and by a set of rules and regulations that have been adopted by City Council, and it's resident driven. So Area F is the permit parking area that we're talking about today. It's shown up on the map here, highlighted in purple. And these are the current boundaries as adopted in 1984. And the area was originally established to address commuter parking impacts in the downtown area. And then the streets that you see highlighted there in black are the ones within that permit parking area that actually have those restrictions posted. So back in February of last year, we received a petition from the residents of 500 East Figueroa and 1000 Rinconada Road, and their request was to expand the boundaries of permit parking area F to include their blocks and to post 90-minute parking permit exempt restrictions on both sides of both of those blocks. So unfortunately, when we got this request, we didn't have a whole lot of time to turn it around between when it was received and when the high school went out on break, because their main concern was with the student parking that occurs along those streets. And that also happened to coincide with the rollout of the oversized vehicle parking ordinance, which consumed a lot of staff time, unfortunately. So we did have a little bit of a delay there, but we brought this to you in February of this past year, at which point you directed us to undertake a parking survey and return to you with recommendations. So we went ahead and did that survey the week of March 5th through the 9th. 17 total counts of vehicles were taken, mostly during school hours, but we also did do a few outside of school hours. And what we found was that parking on 500 East Figueroa was pretty heavily impacted. We saw multiple instances of parking that exceeded 80% on that block. On Rinconada, we didn't see as much as much parking there. However, the survey was conducted during the Peabody Stadium construction project, and what that's done is that has closed off the direct routes from Rinconada down to the high school. So I believe you can still get around there, but it's certainly a much more indirect route, and the students have largely been deterred at this point from parking up there due to that construction. So we did see occupancy on Rinconada that was lower than it would likely have been had the stadium project not been in place and those pathways been fully open. So following that parking survey, we went ahead and met with the residents of those streets in order to present them with our results and have that discussion with them to make ourselves available for questions and give them more information. So they gave us some feedback at that meeting, and the primary thing that they were concerned with was that the student parking prior to the stadium construction they reported was very high. They were feeling very impacted and crowded on their streets. And then following stadium construction, they do believe that the student parking will immediately resume there. So we took that and we went ahead and tried to do what historical research we could, and we managed to find some aerial photos of Rinconada Road prior to the beginning of that Peabody Stadium project. And here you can see one that does show pretty heavily impacted parking on Rinconada Road. We're looking at occupancies greater than 88% there, so it's nearly completely parked up. And this does confirm the feedback that we received from the residents. So we've taken all that information and measured it against the decision criteria that are laid out for us in the municipal code. And based on that, we have a high level of support from the residents for the expansion of this permanent parking area. We do have the observed parking congestion on 500 East Figueroa, as well as the expected return of student parking to Rinconada following the stadium construction. So we would recommend that the boundaries of Area F be expanded to include both of these blocks. This would not place any additional significant enforcement burden on the PD because they're already over there in that area enforcing permit parking on some adjacent streets. In addition to that, we would also recommend at this time that we go ahead and post permit parking restrictions on both sides of the 500 block of East Figueroa, as well as the west side of 1000 Rinconada. At this point, we're going to go ahead and leave the east side open and unrestricted so that there's no homes that are along that side of the street. It's immediately adjacent to Peabody Stadium, so that would still leave some public parking there for people who do need to access the area. And parking restrictions in this area would be the same as they are throughout the rest of Area F, which is anybody can come and park for up to 90 minutes without a parking permit. Beyond 90 minutes, people with Area F permits would be able to continue to park there. And those restrictions would be enforced from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday. So this concludes our presentation.
Thank you. Remind me of your name again?
My name is Sarah Clark.
Clark, okay. Ms. Sneddon, questions?
I did have a question. Is there any reason why it couldn't be Monday through Friday if it's to deter student parking? I'm just wondering about the Saturday edition.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Sneddon, we would prefer to keep the restrictions consistent across the rest of the permit parking area so that you're not having a different set of restrictions around the corner on for example, the 400 block of East Figueroa, just to avoid public confusion, to make it a little bit easier for parking enforcement.
Question, Mr. Friedman?
My question is, are there any other streets where we would just be pushing the problem to?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Friedman, staff does not believe that this would cause significant impacts to the surrounding streets. There is already permit parking that is posted on a portion of 400 East Figueroa. We don't have permit parking right now along Olive Street, However, those residents are eligible to petition if they do feel that their streets are being impacted. And when we looked at the potential for displacement, at that point you're starting to get kind of far away from the school. I think that if we're not seeing student impacts along Rinconada Road when that pathway is closed, I would imagine that if the students were displaced from Rinconada Road like they are right now, because that path is closed, that we would already be seeing those impacts on other surrounding streets, and we're just not seeing increased impacts right now. So,
okay, Mr. Rouse.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Are the neighborhood? I was just thinking to follow up on Mr. Friedman's train of thought. The areas off of Anapamu, those neighborhoods up there, are they already restricted in those areas? And do they receive student impacts from parking?
Sure, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Rouse. I believe that the other areas around Anapamu, there are already several blocks that are posted with permit parking. If you'd like, I can go back to that slide. So if you look at this slide, you'll notice that as you get closer to, oh, it's actually not on this slide, I'm sorry. Because Anapamu is in a different permit parking area. But there already are several blocks that are posted with permit parking to address some of these impacts. Also, generally, as you're getting back closer to State Street, it's more commuter impacts that we're starting to see there rather than student parking impacts. I think probably the majority of the student parking impacts, at least based on the complaints that I've heard, actually go kind of to the other side of the high school, down into areas along, for example, like the Ortega-Cota kind of area where we don't have permit parking in place.
No, I remember when my kids were in school that parking was fully subscribed then, so I'm sure it is now. Was there any construction staging going on in that area during the stadium construction project?
During the parking survey, I did not see any formal construction staging. I saw maybe 1 or 2 vehicles for workers that would park up there, but it certainly wasn't enough to be creating an impact. It was, again, not more than 2 trucks at a time. So.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to public comment if there's no other questions from the council. Alan Clammer, you're first, and you have a couple of minutes, and then Anna Marie Gott.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm Alan Clammer. I live at 1011 Rinconada Road, and on behalf of my neighbors on the 500 block of East Figueroa and on Rinconada Road, this has been a very challenging issue for a number of years. We all got together. We signed a petition. We've been heard. We're grateful. The recommendation of the Transportation Planning and Parking Division of Public Works, we think meets our needs. We might have a little bit of disappointment in not getting a restriction on the high school side of Rinconada Road. That we might want to revisit that later, but we'll take a glass half full. In particular, I want to thank Sarah Clark, who put up with my constant, I won't say badgering, but we certainly leaned on her quite a bit, and it did take a long time due to workload on her department. Rob Dayton, Mr. Garza, thank you very much. Assuming that we prevail today, I would certainly urge the council to adopt this resolution. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Ms. Scott.
So on that map, if you take a look, you'll see Anapamu. On the other side of that is Bungalow Haven Neighborhood Association. There aren't any permits up there, and we are severely impacted by activities at the bowl. We do not have any parking limits at night for permits, except for one area in the city. And we should really think about expanding that in some areas where you have nuisances like the bowl. With regards to this particular suggestion, I think it's absolutely perfect for them, and I think that you should actually approve it. I would actually, though, recommend, since, as you know, I am looking into the parking and business improvement area, and I'm now getting a lot of reports on parking, that there was a 2009 and 10 study done on actually parking in the downtown area. Basically, it found that we were not managing our parking very well. People were parking for 2.5+ hours in 90-minute parking because we don't have parking meter maids go and give tickets. But at the same time, our area is so overdeveloped, you would then be running out every 30 minutes to move your vehicle because we do not have enough employee parking for the businesses that are all over the downtown and spreading out into our neighborhoods. There isn't a plan. You mentioned Figueroa and the near the police station. At the corner of Figueroa and I believe it's East Carrillo, there's a very popular spine center. Their employees, which have got to be about 20 or so, play the shuffling game, where they go out and they move their vehicles every 90 minutes.
You finish your thought?
Thank you.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you. That's the end of public comment. Mr. Hart, ready to go?
I just want to thank Mr. Clammer and the neighborhood for working so hard with our staff, and also thank our staff for being very creative about finding a solution about the parking survey. I know things didn't work out with the timing of the survey work, but to find the aerial photographs and to take the extra effort to prove the situation as it existed prior to the construction of the high school was a really creative outside-the-box solution, and I appreciate you taking the extra effort to do that. I think this is a great compromise and a solution that we should embrace, and I would make a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
I hear a second from Mr. Rouse. Is there any other discussion on this item? All in favor? Aye. That looks like it's unanimous, Ms. Estrada. Thank you. Okay, thanks so much, Ms. Clark. Mr. Garza, Mr. Dayton, and we'll move on to the next item. Is that number 13?
Item number 13, subject public hearing regarding proposed increases to wastewater rates and fees, water fees, and solid waste rates for fiscal year 2019.
Okay, thanks. Ms. Irely, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am joined today with Lisa Arroyo, the wastewater manager, and we will be going over our proposed rates for fiscal year 2019 and conducting the public hearing on them. So first off, we have conducted our Proposition 218 noticing. All the notices were mailed to customers in April of this year. In addition, we also post the notice on the city's website, and it is emailed to all electronic billing customers. As of June 5th, we received 9 protest letters for the rate increases. In addition, we've held several public meetings over the course of the spring. On March 5th, we took the proposed fee changes for water and wastewater to the Finance Committee, and then on March 20th, we took both the proposed rates for solid waste and wastewater. In addition, on February 15th, the proposed rates and fees for wastewater were taken to the Water Commission. So regarding the solid waste collection rates, this year, they are driven by 3 major areas in increased costs. The first is the increase in compensation to Marburg for the collection and hauling services. This is a standard component of the contract that we have with Marburg. In addition, there's been some, as you know, a shortfall in the recycling markets. And then finally, the increase in counting tipping fees per our waste services agreement with them. Regarding the collection services, we have a 10-year exclusive agreement with Marburg for collection and hauling, and in that it's called out that we adjust their compensation annually by 70% of CPI. This year that equated to 2.6%. And then the recycling market shortfall. It's been a rough year in terms of actually the value of recyclables dropping significantly. And as such, some revenue that we have depended on in the past is no longer available. And so we've made a small adjustment to compensate for that. And then finally, the increase in tipping fees at the county facility. Per our agreement for the pending Tahigua's Resource Recovery Project, we had a 3-year ramp up of tipping fees as part of that agreement. For fiscal year 2018, the county raised the rates to $99 per ton. For this year, they have proposed $102 per ton, and then there will be a ramp up for next year as well. The purpose of this stepped up tipping fees is to strengthen the county bond offering for the project itself, and also to create a rate stabilization fund. So this fund, which was starting to be funded this year in 2018, our portion, the city's portion, was to be $1.2 million, which is about 40% of that overall $3 million fund. And as you may recall, last year we had deferred the $99 per ton increase as a portion of the rate increase, and so we had taken that out of the solid waste fund reserves instead. So that's part of what we will be recovering this year as part of the rate increase. So in terms of revenue requirements, here's a breakdown based on what I've just described previously. The CPI increase for the collection services is about 2.6%. Then we have an add-in for public containers and abandoned waste every year as part of the rates. The recycling market recovery, which is a 0.7% increase in the rates, and then an 8.2% increase to the tipping fees to cover the tipping fees for the county. That comes to a total revenue increase of a little over $2.7 million, or a 12.1% increase in rates. So this is a slide of representative services and what the change in rates will look like as adopted. So the first line is a common single-family residence of 65-gallon service, increasing from $36.98 to $41.42. Below that are representative multi-unit residential services, depending on whether it's a cart can service or a dumpster service. And then this slide gives you an example of the change in business rate increases, again, whether a cart can service or dumpster service. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Arroyo.
Thank you.
Mr. Rouse has a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
At this point?
If I can go back to where we increased the rate for the tipping fees, I'm a little confused about the presentation only because we had, which amount, was it just the fiscal year 2019 of 102 a ton that's reflected in that percentage?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Rouse. That is the 102.
Okay.
Yes, but because we are adjusting from the fiscal year 17 of $87 to the 102.
Well, I realize we're kind of down the rabbit hole with the county on this in terms of predictability, but because that's a huge spread between the next 2 years. And I don't know if you have the answer for that or not. You likely don't. But as we look at these rate increases, which may seem incremental for a lot of folks, but for a lot of folks, they're going to be pretty significant. I'm just wondering how much predictability we can have in that. I mean, is there an educated guess, or is that a dangerous thing to do right now, or?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Rouse. I would say at this point that's premature. We are waiting for additional information from the county pending we're in, as you know, in a bit of a holding pattern until some of the legal issues are worked out with the TRRP, and as soon as that's resolved, we'll be able to go back to the table and see and work through some additional financial analysis, and then we'll have more numbers to be able to share with you.
Yeah, because I am there are a lot of people sharing their angst with me in terms of what's going on with rates and want going forward, and there's nothing more fun, of course, than trying to explain water and wastewater policy to the public, so because I don't get it either. So thank you.
Thanks. Councilmember Snedden?
Thank you. I just had a clarifying question, too. So I just want to make sure I understand the presentation versus the staff report with the tipping fees. So instead of 110, the county agreed to 102 for this coming year.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Snedden, that's correct.
Okay. And then the original schedule was then going to go to 121, but you have reason to believe it might be 143 for the next. Is that correct? Because the staff report doesn't mention that next year, so I'd assumed that it would go back to the 121, so that it was sort of a break for a year and then back on schedule. But what the PowerPoint is suggesting is that it's going down this year, but then to go up even more in the third year. Is that correct interpretation?
Thank you,
Mr. Samario, thank you.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Snedden, so We don't know what it's going to be in 2020. I think we're going to be back still in this sort of incremental ramp-up period. Originally, the project was scheduled to be completed in 2019, and so we had a 3-year ramp-up to the final rate, whatever that would be. It would go to 99 to 110, and then back then it was estimated to be at 121 when it was up and running. Everything's been pushed back essentially 2 years, so we are kind of in limbo right now. So for 2020, I don't expect it to go to 140. I think it'll still be some incremental amount because the project will be now 20 or 21 before it's operational, so we're going to be ramping up. So we don't know what it's going to be. Again, as Ms. Harley indicated, she's right. It's going to be sometime in the fall that we'll know more, hopefully, about what the final cost would be in the future, and then deciding how we ramp up to that over the next few years.
Okay, Councilmember Dominguez.
The agreement, the solid waste materials delivery agreement, it doesn't have a price set for 2020?
That's correct. So the county adjusts their tipping fees every year. So normally it would just be what the tipping fee is to go to Tehiguas, and they would typically raise it by some kind of CPI. It's a little bit of a hybrid because they're trying to still incrementally get to what the ultimate price will be for the TERP. So they're raising it not quite like what was provided for. Again, it was supposed to be 110. They raised it to 102, recognizing there's a delay in this project. So every year, though, we'll get an idea of what that's going to be. We don't know what it's even going to be in 2020. Again, we have to decide on what that ramp up will be for 20 and 21 based on what the final price will be once, and we'll know that in the fall or winter.
So the schedule just had a 2-year ramp up. It didn't list any numbers out beyond that.
The original schedule had a ramp up from 90 to up from the price of 87 at the time to 99 to 110, and then the actual price. But now we are off track now by 2 years, so we're going to have to revisit that whole ramp up based on what the price may be.
So are we legally bound to pay anything more than the 110? I'm not sure if that question can be answered by you or council.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, the whole concept, if we're moving forward with this project, I think it makes sense for us to ramp up to some ultimate price. If it's 140, it makes sense to not wait until the last year to get there. So, raising the tipping fees every year by some amount to get there more gradually makes sense to us. I can't tell you what those dollar amounts are yet because I don't know what the final price is yet.
And I think you said something in there about if we get to the project. What happens if the project doesn't get developed? Would that have been for naught?
Yeah, and then we're basically paying for burying trash at Tehiguas, so or some longer delay. And the monies that we are paying right now, even at 102, is providing more money to the county than what's needed, obviously, for the project. So we're essentially putting money on deposit with Tehiguas. The first year was that reserve that Mr. Harley mentioned, the $3 million restabilization fund. Anything we pay above essentially that going forward will be money that ultimately will come back to us.
And how do we know it'll come back to us?
Because that's provided for in the agreement with the county.
Can you elaborate?
Well, the agreement that was executed in December of 2016 between the city and the county provided for this payback period, this payback of extra monies, the surplus monies, they call them dividends. And so we're paying these amounts again to kind of provide to ramp up and then to provide coverage for the bonds that were going to be sold. And there would always be this mechanism for paying those monies back that were surplus as dividends in subsequent years. If the project doesn't go through, then all those monies that are been paid above and beyond what's needed to bury the trash at Tehiguas would come back to us.
So even money that they're paying for legal fees or money they've expended moving facilities around and purchasing properties?
Yeah, we're getting into a lot of complication here, but I'm sure that they're going to factor into the annual tipping fees going forward any additional costs they've had, whether they're ongoing or one time into the tipping for just burying trash. So I'm sure we'll be paying our share of any of those costs associated with burying trash and running a landfill.
I'm not sure if I understand you, because you keep talking about we're going to pay the cost for burying trash. Right. But that's including all of the incidental costs that they've incurred because of the mistake with the mapping and the lawsuit. So we're going to cover those costs for them?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that's what the mechanism for that is. I can't say for sure. My guess is that they're going to try to build all that into the tipping fees going forward. That's my assumption.
Can I ask our city attorney for his opinion?
Mr. Cohen?
And if you need me to reframe
Madam
the
Mayor,
question, I can.
yeah, Councilmember Dominguez, I heard you ask about the city's obligations to pay over time. Is that where?
Yeah, it's twofold. It sounds like according to the agreement that we signed and entered into, we were obligated to pay 102 a ton and then 110 a ton for those
Madam
2
Mayor,
years.
Councilmember Dominguez, so I want to tread carefully because we've had a number of closed sessions where the council's been apprised of rights and obligations, and I have stopped short of providing you any kind of formal litigation opinion. What I believe is that the circumstances have changed for both parties in this contract, and that would mean that it would be subject to what's called novation, meaning I think either the county or the city could go to court if there's a dispute to rebuild the contract to match the circumstances we have now regarding Tahiguas.
And I guess the problems I see, again, just speaking very generally, is the more we pay in, the more they can come up with creative alternative theories of law like reliance and quantum noviat and I'm not sure what, but there's theories they might invoke because we keep paying at a higher rate that concern me. So I'm just looking for a reason why we should be paying 102 or 143, or I guess the 102 is based on the agreement, but anything above that seems to me like we should have a good common sense reason, if not a legal reason. And if it doesn't seem like there's a strong theory that we would get those monies back, and that's where my second line of questions were, is if they incur a bunch of costs related to the dissolution of the project, are we on the hook for those costs? So they bought some land, they doing new plans.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Dominguez, I haven't evaluated what Mr. Samario described as the dividend provisions where we might recover surplus funds. So I can't help on that. I can say that we're talking about disposing waste and we have Marburg in the middle. So as we proceeded over the last year, really, we have been trying to balance the impacts on really an innocent contractor and the consequences of the county's mistakes on our ratepayers as well.
So it seems like it might be appropriate to go into closed session in the near future to discuss some of these issues that we shouldn't be discussing in open session. Does that make sense to you?
That's up to the council. We had left it, as I recall, that we would be coming back as the needs arose. Mr. Casey.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember, we
Thank you.
gave a thorough presentation on this back in February or March to the full council. Litigation was pending at the county. The council's direction at that time was to see that play out, but schedule a 6-month check-in from that presentation date. So we will be coming back to the council, I believe, in the September time period with a status report on the project.
Right, and what I'm hearing from Mr. Samario is that the agreement, if the project doesn't go through, we've made provisions for getting out, backing out of it, getting our money back. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I think that's true. The questions that Mr. Dominguez mentioned about legal costs, what's our share, I really can't answer that. How the county will build it into the rates. Keep in mind that if the project falls apart, we don't have any contract with the county for us to deliver our waste to the Tahiguas landfill. We do that because it's a regional facility, and so I think we have the ability to discuss rates and future rate increases without a project to the Tahiguas landfill, and to what extent it includes things we may not think are appropriate. But that's an assumption that the TRP does not come together.
Okay. Mr. Hart, you have your light
So
on?
I'm actually not
Oh,
finished.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
So regarding the recycling markets, the $154,000, what does that mean when it says to the rates to cover operational expenses?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Dominguez. That is revenue that we have relied on in the past in building our budget every year to cover part of the costs for the Environmental Services Division staff, and as those markets have gone away, we no longer have that revenue.
Is that an annual number?
That's correct.
And just to be clear, we are no longer getting sufficient revenues to cover the cost to process recyclables. So we have a contract with Gold Coast down in Ventura, who process that. County has the agreement with the Gold Coast. It used to be that we would get on a net basis revenues. At one point, we got about $500,000 in net revenues after the processing cost. Now we're essentially not covering those costs, so we have to pay the county for the overall net, our share of the net loss, if you will, on that, and that's the $154,000 number, or at least that's the number that's going up. So it's a line item expense now in our budget that's going up every year.
And we used to receive $500,000 in revenue?
In the heydays, yes.
So it's a $600,000 turnaround?
Yep.
And is that the maximum exposure we have? It can't get any worse because we're paying that for people to take, or we're just paying costs?
Councilman Dominguez, no, and I'm going to let Ms. Irely explain why that isn't the maximum exposure. Yeah, it's a dynamic market. You know, we talked about the China sword, the national sword, you know, where they're not taking materials. We are in a really uncertain period right now with recyclables. Some communities, some states are no longer recycling certain plastics, or are no longer recycling paper. It's just a lot of these things are now being buried. So the market right now is really uncertain. Is it going to get worse? Potentially, we don't know. But I wouldn't say that's the maximum exposure we have, what we're paying today on a net basis to process those recyclables. Could get worse, could stabilize. We don't know.
And if we threw them into a landfill, would that be worse in terms of the economic cost? Obviously, the environmental cost is significant.
From a financial perspective, I haven't done the analysis. I don't think it'd be much worse just to bury the material, because you know the cost is about $87 or $90 a ton to bury it. It's the environmental component that we're concerned with. Certainly with paper, because it's organic and it creates methane and all that. And plastics are more inert, so they don't create that kind of an impact. But it's the issue of filling up space that we hadn't anticipated, and the environmental impacts of just a landfill growing. And it's going to run out of space more quickly if we're having to bury more material than we anticipated.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hart?
Well, it strikes me that there is an element of similarity between the city charging the county the library administration fee and accepting the information that the cost information involved in that, and our relationship with the county in regards to the operation of Tehiguis. There's a certain degree of trust between government agencies that's required in these situations, and so I don't know that Councilmember Dominguez's questions, to the degree they are, particularly given that they consistently come up every time we have this conversation, I think there should be some consistency between your approach between the issues. And I'm surprised that you are so offended by the county and others asking questions about our library administration fee, and you ask the same questions in regards to the Tehiguis tipping fee.
We can have more discussion. There's still more presentation, I think, and public comment, but thank you for weighing in on that. Mr. Friedman?
I just wanted to make a point, and maybe you can, hopefully my understanding of this is that what's really driving the cost is the state mandates to get to 75% diversion of organics and recycling, because that's not cheap. So in order to get there, we have to invest in some type of facility, correct? Like a dirty MRF. To get to the 75%, we can't just bury the trash anymore.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Freeman, yeah, that's absolutely true. You know, we, for a number of reasons, including state mandates, we want to avoid burying material as much as possible, so diverting it to whatever extent. And and we are right now paying to process recyclables in lieu of burying it. And environmentally and for state mandate purposes, it makes sense for us to do that. So I'll leave it at that.
And the recycling issue, it's not just for Tehiguis. It's California-wide, it's nationwide. So the cost, if we went somewhere else, it's not like those disappear. They would still be a cost if we had to go somewhere else, correct? On the recyclables, the loss in recyclable, if we had to go somewhere else, did we lose that revenue as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's independent of anything we do. Recycling markets have been impacted, and we're not getting the revenue we used to get. That's the reality no matter what path we go forward from here on.
And my last point, it's more a point, is that in order to reach the 75% diversion rate that the state is, we either invest in this facility or we have to find another facility that gives us the same level. It doesn't have to be the same type, but the same level, and that would require us to actually truck our waste to another facility that, from my understanding, the closest one would be San Fernando Valley. So not only would you have to pay their fees, you'd have to pay the trucking fees. So the Tahigas saying that Tahigas is the reason that all these costs are going up, it's not accurate. You have to look at the whole comprehensive picture of what's going on at the state and the other level. So is that correct that we would have to find a comparable facility to get to 75%?
Yeah, I think we would need to do something beyond what we're doing today to get to 75%. We're pretty close to that now, but if we wanted to get to a sustained level of 75% or more, we would have to do something different. We've said before that the critical component to the TRRP is a dirty MRF, because it takes what's in the trash can and it separates things that are hopefully have some recyclable value, but more importantly, it takes away from that waste stream the organic fraction that is being buried, which has the most environmental impacts and is a pretty substantial portion of our waste by weight. So I would say the dirty MRF is critical in getting there. The AD is less critical because there are other alternatives to achieve the same level of diversion from the landfill. So we've talked about composting and the like. That the AD is one of another. There's a couple options with the organics. So I wouldn't say that this set of facilities is the only answer. The MRF is certainly the answer if we're going to achieve those diversion goals or mandates. The second part is more. I wouldn't be able to say the same with the second component.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was a good discussion related to solid waste, but let's focus back on the fees. And go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Before I start in on wastewater rates, I just want to remind everyone that in August of 2017, Council adopted a 3-year rate increase for water, so we won't be discussing it. It covers fiscal years 18, 19, and 20. Proposed rate increases for this year are 6% for wastewater. This is a similar slide that I've shown in previous years. We did a rate study in 2014. We did an update to it in 2016 because we found that throughout the drought, revenues were dropping and we weren't seeing the rate increases. And that was largely because of the large volumetric component to our residential rates. We also have higher capital costs from when we started in 2014 to 2016 at about $20 million. Our sewer service charges, they make up about 97% of our total revenues for wastewater. About 85% of that is residential. And you see from the pie chart there, we have a very large component of volumetric charges, so it is very variable with water consumption. Conversely, we have operational expenses that are largely fixed. We have about 87% of our operational costs are fixed. Those are, personnel costs and debt. We have about 13% that are variable. Typical variable costs are going to be electrical and chemical. I showed a slide similar to this last year. This is representing our capital funding. We have about $90 million of planned projects through 2023. They comprise of the collection system, the lift station, and El Estero. El Estero being the largest capital investment because the plant is about 45 years old. On the bottom, you'll see our pay-as-you-go capital that is usually between $4.2 and $4.6 million. We pay our smaller capital projects with that. On the blue lines, you'll see our cash flow for our debt-funded projects. Those are going to be our larger $20, $30 million capital projects that we use. Generally, state revolving fund for those. As far as debt service, this is a big component of our budget. If you look at our operating financial plan, which is shown on the graphic, on the bottom we have our operating expenses. Those are the blue lines or the blue bars. We have our purple, which is our debt, And then we have the red, which is our reserves. If we were to keep rates as is, the red line shows that out in 2024, we will barely be covering our operational expenses. The green line shows what the proposed rate increases per our 10-year financial plan and what is needed in order to fully fund our program. We have SRF loans for fog and headworks currently that we are paying for, as well as our bond from 2004. It was refinanced in 2016. We are currently at approximately 1.7 million in debt payments. When we start paying for our $30+ million secondary improvement project, which is forecasted in 2020, our debt payment will rise to about $3.7 million. And when we pay for our $20 million electrical upgrades in about 2025, our debt is expected to rise to just under $5 million. This year, we are again proposing a 6% increase. This is how it will affect our low water users and our moderate water users. Our lower moderate users are about 6 HCF per month is what they will use. Their bill will go up by about $2.25 for a high end of $40.09. Our moderate water users are about 12 HCF per month, and that increase you'll see is about $3.01. If we compare to our surrounding sanitary agencies, now they charge on an annual basis. I've calculated it to show a monthly, what it would be per month to be comparison to ours. We are right in line with Carpinteria. Currently, we are just under at $50.52. We will be just above them at $50.73 for the maximum residential bill. And then you see Montecito as fairly high compared to all of the rest of us. So we are again proposing a 6% increase. It's to keep up with our capital improvement funding. You've been seeing some of the pictures of capital work that we've been doing at El Estero. It's a very large investment that we have to make over the coming years. We did recently finalize our facility plan, which was projecting out the capital improvements needed over the next 25 years, and we're right around $70 million that we'll need to invest into El Estero. And the increase is also needed so that we can adequately maintain reserves. We have recently gone out for a request for proposal process for a rate consultant. We have received 8 proposals. We are evaluating them, and we expect to come back to the council in July to award a contract. The rate consultant will be taking a look at our cost of service and making sure that our rates are appropriate. Again, the facility plan, the $70 million, we want to make sure that we have adequate rates to support all of the capital work as well as the process changes at El Estero. We want to make sure that all of our rates are consistent with cost of service principles. Putting it all together with the water increases, the trash increases, and the wastewater increases, this is what a single-family resident might expect to see in their combined bill. Currently, they are going to be seeing about a $208 bill. With all of these increases, it will be about $217 per month. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Wait
questions on wastewater and water, Mr. Friedman?
I just wanted to ask, is there any mechanism for those with limited incomes or perhaps seniors to offer rate relief, or is everybody treated equally under Prop 218, I guess it would be?
Yeah, everybody is treated equally.
Okay, is that it? Mr. Rouse.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Of course, this is ironic because the better our people perform, of course, they end up getting punished because they're not using enough water. But are we using anything in terms of reserves or other funding to smooth the rates in this formula, or is it strictly? I mean, we're about double the CPI, not quite double the CPI in terms of the amount of rates we're going up, and I realize that that's not necessarily related. But just thinking about the consumer out there and what they're looking at, and like you say, the ironic thing is the better they do, the worse we do. So looks like Mr. Hagmark might have a thought on this. You don't get enough of this as it is?
I don't. I'm just dying to talk to you guys. Madam Mayor, Councilmember Rouse, yes. And one of the good points is the state revolving fund does help us to actually smooth things out. I mean, we are looking at, what was it again in the next 5 years?
$70 million.
$70 million in expenses, and we're able to spread that over the next 20 years. So that by itself allows us to, smooth it out and hopefully minimize the impacts to our ratepayers in that way.
Is that that's not expressed anywhere in these numbers, though, right? Or is it?
There was one graphic that showed all the different capital expenses that are going on.
Okay, so that's where the revolving fund helps out with the capital expense.
Right.
Okay.
Right, exactly. So we're now able to kind of spread that debt service over several years, but we're actually, $15, $20 million contracts are going out in a single year, but we're able to smooth it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
It may be helpful just to somehow to work the public through that and work us through that, actually, so it makes it a little more palatable.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we just celebrated with DSAL, we're always looking for grant opportunities to try and offset some of these projects. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of maintenance or money out there for maintenance, which is challenging. But we're always pushing to see what we can find. And I know there's another bill coming up in November to try and get more money out there for water infrastructure. So,
thank you.
There's one more slide.
Yes, my apologies, I forgot.
That's okay.
We had to talk about fees as well. We are proposing a 3% increase for fiscal year 19 in our fees. There are a few fees that are outliers that we had to do more than a 3% increase because we wanted to recoup material and staff costs, and they didn't fall nicely in that 3%. And then there were some minor language edits as well.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions from us, Mr. Dominguez, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand this last part about the 3%.
Our fees, so that would be our capacity fees, our typical fees for sewer taps, all of those typical fees that aren't part of the rates.
Okay, great, thank you.
We'll go to public comment. Laurel Hall, you're first, followed by Phil Walker and then Bonnie Raisin.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and the council. I got this letter about the rate increase, and I'm very grateful that you sent it because I wouldn't have found out about it. I don't think the news press had any, what do you call it, announcements. Anyway, I'm glad I'm here, and I'm hoping that maybe they won't raise the water rates. The trash, I don't know, how you can lower your trash rates. I live in downtown Santa Barbara, and the water is what kind of worried me. The drought killed my wildflower seeds. I'd never watered my yard. I didn't have to. When it rained, my flowers would come up, and then now they're gone, and it's dry. It looks like a desert. The only flowers that are available are my 4 o'clock bushes. So I take my rainwater, put it in watering cans, and then I pour on the flowers. That's the only watering. And of course, my orange tree. I think the oranges are falling off. I'm going to water more in the orange tree. If it raises my bills, so be it. But I was hoping that maybe they could really. I conserve a lot. I live alone. I don't, use a lot of water. And I'm hoping that maybe they won't raise the water rates, at least in my group. People that, low income, that don't use that much water, whatever. I'm hoping that they just won't raise the rates. That's all I've got to say. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Snedden has a question for you.
I was just hoping that staff might be able to explain to the public how water
ma'am,
rates.
I can't hear you.
Oh yeah, I'm hoping that staff might be able to explain how water rates are tied to conveyance or at the actual delivery of water, and maybe more details about how those rates come about in the first place, Mr. Hagmar.
I'm not too sure what you're trying to explain.
Staff is going to tell us about our rates.
Why you have the rates the way they are.
Yes, ma'am.
Right? Yeah.
Madam Mayor, council members, As you probably know, we go through our rates typically on an annual basis, and they are incredibly complicated to come up with. And the guiding principle underneath that is the cost of service. We are not allowed to charge more nor less than the cost of providing that service. And when we look at those services, it's close to, I think it's about similar to wastewater. It's about 80% of our costs are really fixed, and those have to do with maintenance of our equipment and the staffing to run it. So there is very little variable, and that's what's been difficult about our conservation is, although that's our primary desire for our community to conserve, unfortunately it doesn't conveniently reduce our cost of operating. But when we do go through that, we're looking at our various supplies and the cost of all those various supplies. And the council has laid out to us the priorities. And of course, for those who are low water users in our community, they are a priority for the community, and they receive some of our most affordable water, which comes from typically our local wells. And so when we go through and kind of come up with that pricing, if you are a low water user, you are going to benefit from the more affordable water that the city has. And then so on as we get into more of our more expensive sources. But we do our best to try and control it. It has been a very difficult last few years, and I really feel for our community, and I think we've really tried to manage that the best we can. And hopefully when this drought's over, I think we've gotten our rates to a position at this point that looking out, we're looking at very small increases, if that. But we've done a lot of the heavy lifting already, and I ask our community to bear with us as we continue to struggle into now our 8th year of this drought, which is a real challenge.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Mr. Walker?
If you'll excuse me, I'm a little dry. I've been sitting here a long time. I think city staff has done an excellent job of crafting the grant fund applications and taking some of that pressure spike increase, damping that down, so to speak. And, from what I've seen out in the water world, you don't want to wind up in a position like the Oxnard Sanitary District, where I think city council, 4 city council members were facing recall a couple weeks ago. They weren't recalled, but you don't want to get to that point. So I give my congratulations to all the city staff involved. What I've seen, being a ratepayer for 45 years or more, 50 years almost around here, they've done an excellent job. One other quick thing about the solid waste program. I listened to a gentleman 3 or 4 weeks ago. He was the owner of a major recycling enterprise up in the Bay Area. He has a warehouse full of mixed paper, the size of this whole De La Guerra block here. He can't unload it. China is not accepting mixed paper anymore. So it's a major problem, and especially with the tariff wars starting to ramp up. You haven't seen the end of that, so it'll take very talented people, again, to be able to navigate through these problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Raisin?
I'm Bonnie Raisin. Thank you for such a lucid explanation about water. I feel as though I'm missing something. We have a desalination plant, and nobody has talked about that. I know it's not in operation, at least I haven't heard that it is. And that was built for just the very reasons that we've been talking about. And so I think the public deserves an explanation. Maybe a lot of people may not even know, but I remember sitting in these council chambers in the 90s, kind of scratching my head and a lot of other people about why we needed it at all. And now, here we are in a drought, and we have a desal plant that is not running. It is. And I think that at least it would be generous of staff to give an explanation about why it's not running, what the cost would be, and why is the cost important if our water rates are going up. I mean, the desal plant, at the very least, would not cost more. So I'm confused.
Okay, we'll unconfuse you. Mr. Hart, were you going to ask staff to talk about the desal
I was going to
plant?
explain that the desal plant is operating
It is,
at
yeah.
full capacity. It's generating 30% of the city's water supply. It's the reason why there's water coming out of your tap in the middle of the worst drought in our recorded water history. And so the reason why rates are going up partially for water is because it's a very expensive new resource for water, and we're lucky to have it. So if there's confusion about the operation of the desal plant, let's allay that. Let's make real clear everybody understands the desal plant is fully operational. And if you live in the lower part of the city of Santa Barbara, the water coming out of your tap is desalinated water.
All right. Well, thank you for that explanation. I think it would behoove you and staff to go into that a little bit more. It's still vague, and I am fairly intelligent, and for me, it's still vague. So thank you.
Okay.
Well, the only thing I would
Thanks.
add to that is, are we done with public comment now?
I was just going to read into the record that Nan Holt wrote us a letter, shocked and distraught that we would raise wastewater and sewer rates, and she's asking us not to. But go ahead, Mr. Hart.
Well, to that point specifically, it would be great if we didn't have to do that. But the fact of the matter is that we are paying for the desal plant that we have turned on and is providing water to our residents. We are having to fund our share of the new costs associated with the expenses or the loss of revenue that comes from a collapsing recycled materials market. We have to provide funding to transition the Tehiguis facility into its future waste diversion mode in the most environmentally sensitive way and cost-effective way as possible, and we're doing that in partnership with the county. So there are a number of factors involved in the additional costs for these services that we are reluctantly, but without any other option, passing on to our customers, because that is the cost of doing business, and the city can't lose money on these operations. Bottom line, though, is that I think it's remarkable that with a 2% or more CPI environment, that we're able to control these costs so that there are net only 4.3% increase in people's bills. Given the major additional infrastructure investments that we're making, that is a heroic, incredible feat to have fees increase that little in relation to the cost of living going up. So I think staff has done a great job, and these are very modest increases in that context.
And did I hear Ms. Arroyo say that we had already bumped up water rates, right? So that's not on the table today, but the other two are. I mean, we're moving them all forward, I think. Correct, ma'am?
Madam Mayor, yes, that's correct. Water has already been done.
Okay. So I'm looking here. We've had our hearing, and we're providing direction to staff regarding any changes. If we break them out, wastewater, water, and solid waste, and then people who have concerns about the solid waste rates can vote against it if they like. Mr. Casey, you had some advice?
No, just Madam Mayor, the actual adoption is next week, so your charge today was to do the public hearing. If there's any changes you want to make in the proposed rates, we'd like that direction today. Otherwise, we'll bring the rates back for adoption next week.
Okay. Mr. Dominguez?
I want to go back to the discussion of the closed session, and I'm worried if we wait until after September when we have more information from the county, and the county obviously knows we're having this hearing. I'm sure someone there is checking in to see how we're operating with regards to this joint project, that it's not very strategic. And I think we should have a closed session so we can discuss some of the things that might come up and be ready to take action, or have a list of questions that we want to have addressed when they do come to council. So I'm going to make a motion now that we have a closed session sometime in the end of July or beginning of August where we can address these issues. And also, I know our new council members, Ms. Nedden and Mr. Friedman, haven't had a chance to discuss this at closed session and be briefed. So I think earlier, sooner, given that they've already caused $100 million or so estimated damages. So I think it's important that we address it early and frequently, not at the county's schedule, on the county schedule.
We haven't had a closed session with the 2 new council members this year on Tahigas. Does that? You haven't? Okay. Is there a second to Mr. Dominguez's motion?
I'll second. I think it would be a good idea before we get the 6-month review back to be able to debrief on some of the legal issues that I know that I'm not fully aware of.
Mr. Rouse, to the motion?
I have no problem with the concept. I do want to give staff some latitude in terms of what the timing would be like, because we have a lot of questions in flux and a lot of questions with the county that probably need to be fleshed out. So I don't know what the appropriate timing would be. I'd like to get some direction from staff if there is, in fact, timing that's better than others. Mr. Casey.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Councilmember, I think Mr. Dominguez's motion was July or August, and I clearly understand the intent prior to when we bring back a presentation to the full council so that you have an opportunity to have the closed session prior to that, and we can work with that.
Okay. Mr. Friedman, a comment?
I'm just trying to understand the closed session, because a lot of the information we're going to need is going to need to come from the county. So we're having a closed session on information that we don't have from the county because we're upset with the county. So the point of the closed session is to what? I'm just confused.
I can address that. Or...
Madam Mayor, members of the council, if you wish to have a closed session, the basis would be deciding whether to initiate litigation involving the county. That's what we've looked at in the past, and I believe that's lawful.
Okay.
Then I'll be voting no.
And
Okay.
with regards to your request, and you said upset with the county, it's not a matter of being upset with an entity. Although I imagine there will be a fair number of taxpayers out there who are upset that you're supporting the fact that we're subsidizing the $100 million in extra costs that the county has incurred, in which we have no recourse to not pay at this point. Because of the mistake they made, whether it was negligent or reckless, we don't know, because we don't have the information, and that's information that's been available for over a year in terms of the mistake they made with the Coastal Commission map. It took them over a month to even let us know that the mistake had been made. So that's the kind of partnership we're dealing with. So we need to be on our guard and be proactive. And the letter that the mayor read, or the part of it where she said this person didn't want raises, it wasn't that she didn't want raises. She said these raises are not small but very large. I cannot reconcile them into my monthly income. So what you have to understand is there's a lot of people in our city on fixed incomes, particularly in my district and Mr. Gutierrez's district, who are on pensions, on retirement, or not working. And to them, a 3 or 6% raise every year of their fees and taxes is really significant. So we need to really be guarding their fisc, guarding their dollars. And this is one way when we can do that. It's 30 minutes to an hour of our time in July or August. It's not a huge burden. If you don't think you have that time, you can just not attend the meeting. There are plenty of things you can do.
Okay.
I need to say something.
Yeah, Mr. Friedman.
I need to say something.
Yes,
this is the second week in a row, Councilmember Dominguez, that you have questioned my integrity. Don't question my integrity. You can debate me on the facts, but do not question my integrity. And if you feel you need to question someone's integrity, don't question anybody else's on here. And if you need to, hold up a mirror.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sneddon, your light is on.
I would appreciate the closed session for legal issues so that I can understand ahead of time what questions we may be allowed to ask when we are given the update, and which background information that I might not be aware of. I could be briefed separately from that, but I think it is a good idea to hold the closed session just to have the conversation beforehand, and then again a closed session after, so that we could discuss what our options are at that time also.
Right, and we don't necessarily need to instigate litigation just because we're having a closed session. So we can all take a deep breath and imagine that we're taking in information. So we have a motion on the floor. So you seconded the motion to have a closed session in July or August before we have an open session hearing on the Tahigas project. Does everyone understand the motion? Okay, let's take a roll call on that one.
Councilmember Friedman?
No.
Councilmember Dominguez?
Yes.
Mayor Protem Rouse?
No.
Councilmember Hart?
No.
Councilmember Sneddon?
Yes.
Mayor Murillo?
No. Okay. So that was 4-2. Very good. Let's go back to the wastewater or to the rates, and we can take them separately if we think some people are going to vote no on the solid waste rates. Do I have a motion for the solid waste, or do we need to go forward?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, you don't need a motion unless you want to give direction to staff other than what the staff recommendation has been. Otherwise, we'll have the adoption next week, and that will be the appropriate time to adopt them.
We'll get to talk about all of this again next week. Okay. Good job, everyone. We'll move on. We'll close this item, and we'll move to the next, which is Councilmember Committee Assignment Reports. Anybody? Thank you, Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you. I guess first on the subject of water, with the Water Commission, there was a public meeting tour of Gibraltar Dam led by Joshua Hagmark and the Water Resources Division, and it was so impressive to see in person and to see Gibraltar fill and to ride out on it and to appreciate how much goes into maintaining that dam as one of the resources that we have. And as other public meetings come up that are open, it would be fantastic for any who want to join in on those. CCRB, we had a meeting, continued closed session, considering the legal implications of the draft biological opinion. With COMB, we had another special meeting, continued closed session discussing the protest of the member agencies regarding quarterly assessments, had a budget overview, and looking at a long-term study for the water quality and sediment management study of Kachuma, which would benefit all the member agencies to understand more about the watershed and the quality there. And we already reported on Ordinance Committee. That's all.
Very good. Mr. Friedman?
I attended a tour of St. Vincent's with Sister Margaret and Executive Director Rosa Paredes. It's a great facility and doing a lot of great work for some of our low-income and seniors. I also attended the Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse Fighting Back Youth Mentor Luncheon, Gratitude Luncheon, where Sally Green, former Catalino principal, was honored. Personal friend. It was a great event, and it was the first event, I believe, since the Biltmore has reopened, and it was sold out. A terrific event, and mentoring is something I've been involved with over the years, 3 youth from the East Side. I've spent hours and hours with them over in East Side Park, so I do care about the East Side, Councilmember Dominguez. And anybody who would like to mentor, please send me an email. It's a great organization, and you can really connect and make a difference in the life of our youth, and they'll make a difference in yours. And I also attended the Gibraltar tour with Councilmember Sneddon, and thank you to our staff. And the last thing I want to mention is the passing of someone that we all know, Ken Williams, who was a hero to many here, especially some our most vulnerable and marginalized of society. And I want to kind of a quote that kind of I've always thought about, and it comes from Eldridge Cleaver, but it's the price of hating other human beings is loving yourself less. And I think that Ken was a testament to that. And he will be missed by many in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Hart.
Yesterday, I participated in a Community Choice Energy Subcommittee meeting with Council Members Friedman and Mayor Murillo, and we heard a presentation from staff about some additional technical analysis that was done on the proposed countywide CCE effort, and the new information is much more encouraging. That item will be coming back to the council in the near future, and the committee unanimously recommended moving forward with the effort.
Mr. Rouse.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a brief meeting with Gordon Auchincloss, the retired Deputy District Attorney, regarding the issue we talked about last week. Mr. Doimus is also working on in terms of the Solutions Court, and a lot of enthusiasm. The pieces are falling together, and I think it's going to be a fabulous public rollout that's going to really show some resolution on the part of governmental bodies, both in the city and the county, to finally move forward on the issue of issues on State Street.
Thanks.
And other places.
I attended the Association of Women in Communication Women of Achievement luncheon, and they honored Dr. Carrie Hutchinson from City College and our state senator, Hannah Beth Jackson, for all the work they've done on behalf of girls and women. We had an election, and I'd like to congratulate Oscar Gutierrez for winning the West Side seat here on the council, and I think we'll be seating him as soon as the county can certify the election and get all the legal issues in order. And Mr. Friedman, after the evening session, I'll adjourn the meeting in honor of Ken Williams and Joanne Keynes, the principal at La Cumbre Junior High School, who passed away this week too. So we have, for the public information, we have a closed session right now. We'll adjourn our meeting, and then we'll come back at 6 o'clock to do interviews for our city boards and commissions advisory groups. So Ms. Estrada, can you read our closed session item?
Item number 14, subject conference with labor negotiator as described in agenda item number 14.
Very good. We'll adjourn to closed session. Good evening, everyone. We'll reconvene the June 12th meeting of the Santa Barbara City Council. And tonight we're having interviews of our residents, and some of you are South Coast, not necessarily city, to apply for our boards and commissions. So thanks for applying. And we've been going in alphabetical order, and I think I'm going to start from the back of the alphabet this time. So we'll start with applicants for the Water Commission. And so you come up and you have 2 or 3 minutes to tell us why you want the position. And anything that was in your application you can highlight. We've read them all, or we will read them all. And so I see no one is... Water Commission back there? Good, come on up. You get to be first. And tell us your name, and then we'll find your name real quick.
Sure.
And then
Kevin Kostick. That's last name K-O-S.
Kostuk?
Kostick, yes.
Thanks. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor Murillo and City Council members. My name's Kevin Kostick, and thank you for...
Oh, it is on. Just talk real close.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for considering me for the Water Commission. The Water Commission serves an important role in our community, advising City Council and making recommendations on vital infrastructure, water management, and other policy decisions that affect the long-term health of the water and sewer utilities of the city's customers. My educational background's in environmental economics and water resource management. I studied economics and history at UCSB before going on to graduate school at Duke University. At Duke, my studies included water resources coursework from hydrology to utility management, and a client project with the city of Raleigh to change reservoir management of a federal surface water facility so that the city could increase water supply, forego a $300 million investment, and preserve 350 acres in seasonal wetlands. I'm interested in natural systems and engineered systems from source water to the end of the pipe. A question that drives my interest in water generally is how do we ensure sustainability of our natural systems while providing water to people, to businesses, and to agriculture. My graduate work led to my current profession in water consulting. I provide services to public water, wastewater, and groundwater utilities across the state of California, from rate design to affordability assessments to advising on IPR projects and groundwater management funding. 18 months ago, my wife and I returned to the city after a 10-year absence. We're both gauchos, and she was dead set on returning to Santa Barbara. After a decade of moving across the country and back, she made it happen. And we're firmly resettled in the city, and we're expecting our first child in December. With that said, I wish to become involved in my community and the Water Commission as a body where I can apply my personal interests and professional skill set to serve my community. Santa Barbara has significant and unique water issues, and we also have innovative and thoughtful solutions in addressing them. I'd be honored to be able to lend my 2 cents as part of the commission. I have a keen understanding of municipal water and sewer systems, including supply sources, infrastructure, cost drivers, and political and policy considerations given to managing a public utility. I'm willing and able to devote the time necessary to serve if appointed. I'm interested in all things water, including drought management, demand management, and conservation, rate affordability, and sustainability of natural systems. Again, thanks for considering me for appointment.
Thanks. Do we have any questions for this applicant? Sometimes we ask questions, sometimes we don't, so don't take offense. Good. Okay, Mr. Dominguez.
Through your employer, have you done any work for the city of Santa Barbara or any of our neighboring agencies?
Not for the city of Santa Barbara. For Goleta Water District, I have, and city of Ventura.
What did you do for Goleta?
Did their most recent water rate study in 2014, which was a 5-year plan for them.
Great, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for Water Commission? How about the Sister Cities Board? Single Family Design Board? Yay. How are you, Mr. Miller?
I am good. How are you, Kathy?
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Brian Miller. I am currently the Vice Chair of the Single Family Design Board. I was originally appointed on the board, I think, in 2008 or 2010. I'm not sure. It's kind of a blur now. But I'm very interested in continuing my position on the board. And I have an interesting quote that was given to me recently that I find really kind of shoots the mark about our town. It says, The quote goes, "The old landmarks and most charming characteristics of Santa Barbara are disappearing before the march of improvement. And though our practical people cannot move the mountains, nor change the sea, nor spoil the climate, they are doing all they can to despoil the quaint beauty of the place and make it just as commonplace American town." And this was an editorial that was printed in the Daily Press of 1874. So it's kind of interesting how we hear something from the past, and it's kind of the theme of this community. I think it's an honor for me to be on the board because it's very rare for cities to take their architecture seriously. And I think we have a proud legacy and a very beautiful environment, and that's because of all the wonderful volunteers and people who've been very active in the development of this community. So that's what I'm applying for. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? I don't see any lights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for single-family design? Welcome.
My name is Joseph Motisha. Been on the board for the last 3 years. I'd like to continue on the board. I'm from Santa Barbara, born, grew up here. I'm a licensed architect. Really enjoy it. I've been pushed for years to be on the advisory boards of the city, but too busy with being an architect. And now that I'm halfway retired, I've volunteered 3 years ago, and I would like to continue volunteering. I own several pieces of property in town. That's basically.
Okay, thanks. I don't see any lights on, so thank you for your service so far.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Single-family design? The sign committee? The Santa Barbara Youth Council. I think we have some young people out there.
Hello, Madam Mayor, City Council. My name is Talia Blumenthal. I'm going to be a senior in the fall. I first heard about the Youth Council through one of their conferences.
Pull it a little closer.
There we go.
Thanks.
I first heard about the Youth Council through their conference on gun violence and immigration. When I was attending this, I really felt the hard work of those currently on the board, and I wanted to join and work hard with them as well. Through the current protests of the students in all 3 schools, I have noticed there are quite a few in all grades who don't believe that our voices will make a change. My main goal is to help those students learn and realize that we can make a change. The youth is the future, and there is historical proof behind that. There have been several college students who have protested for the right to many things, to end things, and to make change. I really want to help these students learn that we can make a change. I know I can bring this to its full potential through the Youth Council. Thank you.
And you're from San Marcos High?
Yes.
Okay. There's different categories, so thanks. Any questions for Ms. Blumenthal? Nope, we're good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Come on up. Don't be shy.
Hello, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Paola Padilla. I'll be a senior starting in the fall at San Marcos High School. I applied for the Youth Council because I was told by Alejandra Valencia that there's opportunities to represent teens in our city, develop my leadership skills, and work with policymakers to improve the community. By serving on the Youth Council, I want to act as a voice for the economically disadvantaged in our city and inspire them to achieve their goals no matter what their circumstances are, because I have that background and that perspective and passion to create positive change. Not too long ago, I was facing challenges, such as getting into trouble at school. I lacked direction and was failing classes until one day I was in a suspension center, and Peggy Ochoa told me about the program, Mujercitas, and how they were going to receive training from the Community Emergency Response Team. I joined Mujercitas and received training, after which I volunteered over 800 hours during and after the Thomas Fire. She also told me about the Youth Apprenticeship Program, which hired me, and I received an opportunity to work for the city in the Environmental Specialist Department and the library, learning valuable job skills. If it had not been for these programs and services, I would not be standing here in front of you today. I hope to be appointed to the Youth Council, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Padilla.
You're welcome.
Okay, good. We're good.
Okay.
Come on up next. Welcome.
Get that all set up. Hi, Madam Mayor, council members. My name is Julia Stone, and I am 17 years old, and I attend Laguna Blanca. So,
And your school is?
Laguna Blanca.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, I see you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. I am willing and able to devote all the time necessary if appointed. I have held many leadership roles in clubs on my Laguna Blanca campus, such as a club called the SOC Club, which I helped found, which works with the homeless community in Santa Barbara. I have also been a leading role in the Dream Foundation and in Model UN. I have also been on student council for the last 4 years. I'm passionate about volunteering in the community and have volunteered at Safety Town as a CIT for many years, and Transition House in the Infant Care Center as a bilingual helper helping take care of the kids. I've already have experience on this council as I was on it last year, so instead of learning all the new processes, I can continue working on projects that I've helped start on this council. I would like to be appointed to this council to have the opportunity to participate in a direct relationship with the Santa Barbara City Council. I want to collaborate with my peers and continue learning the processes and systems of local government so that I can help make changes in my community. I would love to have an influential role in the decision-making of this community and to participate in the local government of Santa Barbara, as I am an aspiring politician and public policy advocate. So certain issues that I'd be interested in and seeing through on this council would be the situation of homelessness. I know that on this council we've started to address issues related to gun violence and undocumented community with our ALMA project and with the Coalition Against Gun Violence. However, we have not really talked about the homeless community, so I think that we could try to serve a purpose there. I also want to continue our work with Coalition Against Gun Violence, since that was kind of starting to pick up as the year ended. So we're planning a lot more next year. On a larger scale, I think that we need to get more teens involved in the community, because I feel like a big problem facing teenagers is that they don't feel connected to families, schools, communities. But by doing outreach and including more teens in leadership opportunities, we can empower these teens to make a difference in their community and, in a bigger sense, our world. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Stone. Any questions? No, see.
Okay,
You covered it well. Ms. Payan, anyone else? That's it? Okay. Thank you. Oh, come on up. Thank you.
Hello, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Anjali Thakrar, and I'm a rising senior at Dos Pueblos High School. So I've been on the Youth Council for the past year, and it's honestly been one of the most influential extracurricular activities I've participated in so far. I feel like I've really been making a change in my community and being a voice for all of my peers and the people around me that beforehand didn't have some way for them to be heard. And I've helped out a lot with the mayoral candidates forum and the city council candidates forum, and with the Project ALMA, which is Adolescent Leaders Modeling Acceptance. And essentially what we did with that is we gauged the public perception of undocumented youth, and then we kind of just spread awareness and resources for those undocumented citizens in Santa Barbara and offered them whatever help they needed. So just later in the year, one cause that I'm really passionate about is feminism, and specifically women in STEM. So I'm the president of the Women in Technology Club at Dos Pueblos High School, and together we started a class after school at Isla Vista Elementary School. That's a coding class for young girls to get them involved in STEM, engineering, science, technology, math, and coding, and kind of just give them a taste of what they could pursue in the future and empower them. And I think that that's a cause that the Santa Barbara Youth Council could pursue possibly, and something that I think could be really powerful just in this day and age of technology and in our community specifically. So I would love to be reappointed to address this issue and continue working on past projects such as the Undocumented Issue Project and the gun violence project that Julia just mentioned. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for doing good work on the Youth Council. Any questions? Mr. Dominguez has a question.
I see on the application it says see attached sheet, and I don't have an attached sheet in my file. Do you all have an attached sheet? Or is it something we can get from the clerk's office at a later point? Did you submit an attached sheet?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
It was for the longer paragraph because I couldn't fit it.
Okay, we'll try to track that down.
Mrs. Strada, if you'll make a note to let us have that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Anyone else back there for the Youth Council? Yes, come on up.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of City Council. My name is Stephanie Jimenez Cortez, and I will be a senior at Santa Barbara High School this fall. Some of you might have seen me around as I am one of the interns that works here, but I also interviewed back in December for the Youth Council, and I didn't make it, but I am back, and I hope that this time I am more successful. One of the reasons I want to be in the Youth Council is because I really believe that youth leadership is important. Not only do teens have a lot to offer in terms of innovation, creativity, and potential, but I think the most direct way to shape our future is to be active and be involved in our communities. Leadership allows younger people to not just fill the gaps left by the older generation, but to mold and shape them to suit us and to suit the shift in perspectives and opinions we bring about. For youth in Santa Barbara, I feel a lot of our issues revolve around school because we are aware of the potential for success that accompanies the pursuit of higher education. I just finished my junior year in high school, and I can say I underestimated the pressure and stress brought by standardized and state testing. I'm sure a lot of my peers could relate, and I think a lot of it had to do with feeling unprepared. I studied in and out of class, but there was only so much I could do on my own. I really would like to see more accessible options for tutoring, specifically for state and standardized testing. I did receive free tutoring from CalSOAP, and I definitely feel it was helpful in terms of renewing my knowledge and just making me a more confident test taker. I don't want any of my peers to feel disadvantaged because of their family's financial status, and with the tremendous value colleges put on these test scores, I know a lot of them would take advantage of the opportunity without hesitation. I would address this problem first by encouraging and supporting programs like CalSOAP, participating in these programs, and encouraging that my other fellow peers participate in these programs as well that can offer free tutoring, and maybe even going as far as helping establish a new or additional program for this specific purpose. If I were to become a youth council member, a talent I think I would be able to share, or a talent that I would want to share the most, is my ability to organize words, thoughts, people, and inanimate objects. I'm not the most spontaneous teenager, but only because I've seen how effective organization can be in bringing about a desired goal. I think this can be of great use to the youth council, especially because it is an adaptable talent. I know that the Youth Council is a very active group, but I don't foresee any conflicts that will interfere with my attendance. As a member, the Youth Council would make it near the top of my priorities list, even if there was a conflict. Youth Council would most likely win.
Great.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
I don't see any. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Youth Council? Good applicants there, huh? Rental Housing Mediation Board? Neighborhood Advisory Council? The Measure P Committee? The Living Wage Advisory Committee? Housing Authority Commission? Historic Landmarks Commission? Oh, okay, Housing
Authority.
Okay. Sorry to rush you.
No, not a problem. Not the first time. I'm Lawrence Larson, and I'm currently on the Housing Commission, have been for 2 years. I graduated from University of Illinois in 1963 with a degree in economics, and promptly went to Officer Candidate School and came out a U.S. Naval officer, and spent 2 tours on 2 different ships at sea. An incredible education. Early on in my career, I was a successful businessman and owned 4 businesses at one time. I've lived in Santa Barbara for 20 years now, moving here from Lake Tahoe. And I've been on the board for 2 years, and I just got to tell you, that's an incredible operation. Housing Commission does so much good, and they're really concerned about the people. And also, it has to be fiscally responsible. So it's been an interesting board, and I'm applying to do it again.
Thanks.
Any questions?
I don't see any. Just today we moved the Johnson Court project forward. So that's good news. It's at 16 units for low-income veterans.
Yeah.
Very good.
And the Garden Court was really special.
Good.
Putting that through.
Well, thanks for serving.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Housing Authority Commission? Historic Landmarks Commission? Downtown Parking Committee. We've got a taker. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Andy Newkirk, NEW. Mayor Murillo, council members, thanks for the opportunity to come here and speak with you tonight. I'm interested in the Downtown Parking Committee. I'm currently a senior planner in advanced planning with the city of Goleta. So planning is kind of what I do, what I like to think about, how I like to think about space. And I think this committee is a perfect place to utilize that to benefit the city I live in. In looking at the role of this advisory committee, there's this great resource in the parking infrastructure downtown. It serves the downtown community phenomenally, but it can also be really flexible and may be able to address other challenges the city faces and the downtown faces as the economy is changing and as transportation patterns change. Those are, I think, 2 fundamental issues that we as a city need to grasp in the downtown corridor. One, the changing retail landscape and vacancies and what to do, and potentially issues with increased housing in the downtown and what that might mean for parking. And also changes in modes of transportation, what it'll mean for increased rideshare, what it means for autonomous vehicles, and how that will impact parking and the needs of parking in the downtown. And I think this committee is perfectly situated to help the council and help the city tackle the questions of how to best leverage that infrastructure to meet the changing demands in the community. And so I think that is such a fantastic and important challenge. I would love to be able to lend my services, maybe a bit of a diverse perspective, but a planning perspective and a kind of spatial thinking perspective to that committee. There was a meeting in May of 2017 of the Downtown Parking Committee. It was couched in a discussion of the AUD program, but the Public Works staff did a great job of listing out all these policies and the housing element, the circulation element, and the cap that all lend themselves to really creative thinking and kind of changing what we do with those resources the city has. I would love to be a part of that creative thinking. I'd love to be to lend my services to this group to try to think of what will best serve the business community and the residents now, and what will best serve them in 5 years and 10 years into the future. How do we transition? How do we rethink that space? So that's what really excites me about being a part of this committee, and I think kind of my background could benefit that discussion.
Okay, you sound like a planner, looking ahead. Ms. Snedden?
Thank you. I see that your current employer is the City of Goleta.
That's right.
Are you doing planning for the City of Goleta, or?
Yeah, I work in the advanced planning division, so we often deal with policy, like we're the ones who update the housing element and kind of manage the general plan and work on regulation like cannabis and ADUs, things that I think you are all familiar with as well. So we kind of tackle many of the issues you probably see with your planning department here.
Mr. Dominguez, your light's on. Was that from, okay, go ahead.
Do you do any transportation work for the City of Goleta?
A little bit. Sometimes we work with the Public Works Department, so I'm kind of, right now I serve as the liaison and planning for the Bike and Pedestrian Master Plan, for instance. If we're opening up the general plan for potential general plan amendments to the transportation element, we become involved. I also attend advisory committee meetings for SB-CAG up in Solvang on a monthly basis as well. So some involvement with transportation. And also we're the group in the city that works on regulation, and we have a new zoning ordinance project, and we're thinking about parking standards. And so that we're tasked with what is reasonable parking requirements for the future when there may not be as many people leaving their vehicles at their offices, leaving their vehicles at big box stores, those type of things. So those are things we try to think about in our job.
And I like that experience. My only concern is more of a philosophical conflict of interest, because your city is suing us and your department is the main client or driver in that. So I would just hate for you to have a conflict if it's your boss who ends up angry with us. Hopefully we can avoid it and go to mediation, but I'm always concerned about the worst case scenario. So that's the one downside I see with your experience, is that it is with a neighbor that we'd love to be more neighborly, and maybe having you on our committee creates more of a dovetailing and a marrying of interests as opposed to where we are now. But it's just something I wanted to find out more about.
Sure. I mean, obviously there is that disagreement ongoing. And looking at the agendas, the past agendas for this committee, I think it works well because it is very much centered on this downtown core. So those conflicts, the disagreements about different types of development that may sprout up between the cities, I don't think it would in any way influence how I would operate on this committee. And in fact, I live walking distance from State Street, so in many ways, kind of my personal opinions, my personal desires for this community is something I feel quite often, and I'm comfortable voicing my opinion on that, my personal opinions on that.
Great, thank you.
Good. So you're a city of Santa Barbara resident?
I am.
Good. Okay. Thanks. Mr. Newkirk. Anyone else for downtown parking? Come on up.
Hi, Madam Mayor and members of the council. My name is Gabriella Forrester, and I'm applying for the Downtown Parking Committee. I know that the Parking Committee controls the lots and the structures downtown, as well as helps with some regulation about parking. And I was fortunate enough to go to school, to go to college in downtown. I worked in downtown. I shop in downtown. And I also formerly worked with the Safe Parking Program, so I have insight into that population. And if I join the council, if I join the committee, I would like to help make parking more accessible for the handicapped, and also to help reduce congestion. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? No, thanks.
All right,
thanks,
thank
Ms.
you.
Forster. Okay. Anyone else for downtown parking? The County of Santa Barbara Library Advisory Committee. Community Development and Human Services Committee. Civil Service Commission. The Measure C Citizens Oversight Committee. Good. Here comes, I think we have a couple of people in the audience. Mr. Aldana.
Okay, hello, Madam Mayor, City Council. My name is Sebastian Aldana Jr.
Santa Barbara native, Eastside resident for the past 15 years. I am applying for the Measure C Citizens Oversight Committee. As for the past 12 years and counting, I have been identifying and advocating for many health and safety projects, along with park improvements throughout the east, west, and downtown neighborhoods. As an advisory council member, started with the former Franklin Neighborhood Center Advisory Committee, and now with the Neighborhood Advisory Council. I do represent the east side, but also helped in other neighborhoods. I do support putting money aside to retrofit the police station. A safe and spacious building is needed for the men and women in blue. But at the same token, we need to address the residents with basic fundamental infrastructure that is needed. I do feel a small percentage, let's just say 10%, should be put for miscellaneous or a slush fund, so to speak, just for projects that are going on and all of a sudden they ran short, and then they can go to that fund. I could give an example. Is on Salinas Street right now in between Mason and Clifton. They're putting sidewalk on the mountainside. It's about a block and a half. It's coming out great. The residents in that area are finally getting sidewalk after all these years. But one thing that was missing is lighting. And that whole neighborhood from Milpas to Salinas, from Cane Perdido to the freeway, everybody wants lighting, proper street lighting on each corner and pedestrian lighting. And a couple months ago at the Neighborhood Advisory Council, there was somebody from Public Works, and I asked a question, are you going to put street lighting, proper street lighting, and pedestrian lighting? They said, yes, of course. I said, okay, great. And then I drive by, and you could tell when there's going to be lighting. And when we did the ribbon cutting at the Casica Bridge, I saw the project manager, the person in charge of that, and I asked him, I went by, I don't see any lighting going in. He goes, because there isn't. And so I was kind of surprised that the person above him said there was, and he said there isn't. And they dug about 6 feet or so. So that was the time to do it. It just to me, it made sense to put lighting, especially when they're speeding and side swiping on that area, because right about Clifton and then it goes down, there's a hill right there. So if you're coming off the freeway going towards, going north, a lot of cars get side swiped, and with better lighting, that could possibly prevent it. So I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Measure C committee?
Good evening. My name is Jim Byrne. That's B-Y-R-N-E.
Thank you.
I'm a resident of Santa Barbara, live on the Mesa. My wife and I retired here about 4 years ago. Myself, after a 40-year career at a high-tech company, engineering and program management. So besides enjoying the Santa Barbara lifestyle, I'm also a volunteer driver for Santa Barbara Meals on Wheels. I was recently elected to the board of directors, and then I'm also the treasurer this year of that organization. I also volunteer at the Santa Barbara Bicycle Coalition as a volunteer bike mechanic at the BC Central Bike Shop. During my working career, I spent the first 10 years or so as an electrical design engineer, and then the last 30 years in increasing levels of responsibility and program management. And I've had a lot of experience, I'll say, evaluating large volumes of data, financial and technical, as well as generating reports and presentations for all levels of executive management. I first became interested in this really over a year ago when it was being rolled out to the public. And the images were our streets and roads, and then the ballot measure language evolved, and it's really 6 or 7 or 8 categories of things, as well as money that can be spent on anything by necessity to pass at a 50% level. So my thought is that this needs to be tied to some kind of metrics, and I know, having perused some of the city staff documents, there are good metrics out there, and I think what the commission should do is, in addition to its responsibility to review the annual accountability report, establish some metrics that can be looked at year after year to see that we're making progress in these infrastructure areas. And there's some good metrics there appear to be. I'm not familiar with the details, but this pavement condition index seems like a opportune one, but there are clearly others that could be developed and used so the public and everyone can get a sense of where we're prioritizing the infrastructure funding. So with that, I'd love to help out if I can, and do you have any questions?
I don't see any lights, but
Okay.
thanks.
All right, thank you.
I love your volunteer service.
Oh, sure, thanks.
BC Centro, too. Good. Yeah. Thanks. Anyone else?
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members. My name is John Tyne, and I'm excited about this particular committee because, to me, I think it represents direct democracy. While elected city officials are very close to the people they represent, your jobs are very broad and wide-reaching. So it's good to have a subcommittee that is laser-focused on a particular earmark like this, and I commend you for having included that in the ordinance. I think it's great. Like the other applicants who have come before you, I was impressed by the question as to whether or not we felt the committee should govern by consensus or by diversity of opinion. And personally, I think there really is no better consensus than one that is formed through the diversity of opinion. And I see the potential for that on this committee, getting a perspective from all around the community and really helping you to show the community how well you're taking care of the infrastructure needs with this earmarked money. Over the last 19 years, I've lived in Santa Barbara, and I've had the great fortune to work in the private sector. Many of you know I am a local business owner and an attorney here in town. That has afforded me a great opportunity to see the perspectives from a wide variety of our fellow citizens. I've represented people from CEOs and famous artists to an unsheltered member of our community. I spent many years representing injured workers, many of whom were undocumented and most of whom earned minimum wage. So I have a real experience seeing issues from a number of different perspectives. After that, I teamed up with my dear friend Kevin Goodwin, and we developed a real estate brokerage that deals with over $100 million a year in transactions. So I'm familiar with dealing with the types of scale that we're talking about here. But in addition to my private sector experience, I've had the great opportunity to do a number of nonprofit volunteer work. And I've listed that in my application, but there are three that I think I'd really like to point out because I think they're particularly relevant to this committee. The first was my experience with Leadership Santa Barbara County. It was both as a participant and ultimately as the president of that organization. It was really transformative. It gave me a really intimate knowledge of Santa Barbara, and I got to forge relationships with a number of aspiring and existing leaders, including many who either occupy now your seats or have in the past, and that was a really amazing organization. The second was being president of the University Club of Santa Barbara. I served at a time when we were facing our own infrastructure challenges. We had a dwindling membership. We had a clubhouse that was dilapidated and deteriorating, and I spent 8 years on that board, 4 of which I was on as president or immediate past president, and it's been considered that we really turned the club around during that time, and I'm very proud of having done that. Lastly, the nonprofit that I've most recently been affiliated with was 1-805, and I just couldn't not mention that. My wife Elise and I really found that to be an amazing, amazing group. We had, out of the ashes of the Thomas Fire, we had 3 friends who came together and decided that they really wanted to show appreciation for our first responders. And they assembled a team of 70 individuals. And over 6 weeks, we all got together and put on what really was an unrivaled event, thanking those first responders. And just last week, we delivered $1.3 million worth of checks to our first responders, including the Santa Barbara Police Department, the Santa Barbara Fire Department, the Sheriff's Department, and a number of our regional responders. And so we were very excited to do that. Finally, I think I'm well suited to serve on this committee because of my experience in the private sector, nonprofit sector, and I have some governmental experience. I've actually represented the city of Santa Barbara in surplus real estate sales, and during that process, I've been able to ensure a fair process and interact with the public and make sure that they're well informed. I also worked for the federal government for several years prior to coming to Santa Barbara. So I hope you'll find my experience relevant, and I look forward to working with you if the opportunity presents itself.
Questions? Ms. Sneddon.
I have no question that you're qualified. I just had a question about if you thought there might ever be a conflict between properties that you're owning or selling and where infrastructure is being prioritized, and how you would handle that apparent conflict.
It's a great question. As an attorney, I come across issues often where we have to deal with competing interests of clients or past clients, existing clients, things of that nature, and I'm well suited to take that into consideration. Like the earlier answer, I think I'd be able to put aside any personal influence or any personal opinions for the goals of the committee, and to really provide the oversight that's called for by the ordinance.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else for Measure C committee? Architectural Board of Review? Airport Commission?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Dennis Houghton, and I reside on the Mesa in the city of Santa Barbara. I'm currently a vice president for GI Logic, and it's a medical technology spinoff from the University of California. I'm once again seeking the position of Airport Commissioner for the Santa Barbara Airport Commission. I last appeared in front of the City Council for the Airport Commission on October 25, 2016. I've attended 14 Airport Commission meetings and have met with Kevin Shore, our airport consultant with Campbell Hill Aviation, to discuss improving airline service to Santa Barbara. Since that meeting, I've been surveying local executives to understand cities that they would like as connections in and out of Santa Barbara. I've learned much about our airport's operations and building lease transactions. Now, I did not apply last year for the 2 commissioner openings last year when I saw that Carl Hopkins and Jim Wilson were reapplying for the commission. They've been valuable contributors on the commission since 2013, and I saw no reason why they should not be reappointed. I believe that the present board has done an excellent job, but with the vacancy provided by Dolores Johnson resigning, I may be an ideal addition to the Airport Commission. I believe I can represent small business and tourism in the city. The present board consists of 1 former commercial airline pilot, and the remainder of the board are made up of general aviation pilots. A little history to help explain my interest. I first moved to Santa Barbara in January of 1977, having been hired right out of college by Searle Pharmaceuticals. I received a memo from Searle's headquarters in Chicago saying I was to report to sales training in a few weeks. I asked my district manager, which airline should I book? Well, I'd never flown commercially, and that's hard to believe in this day and age, but even back then. And he replied, well, my daughter's a flight attendant with United, and my son-in-law is a pilot with United. We fly United. Okay. Nearly 40 years later, I've flown 2.7 million miles United Airlines, and totaling over 3 million miles on all airlines. To cities and small towns on 6 continents. It's the equivalent of going to the moon and back 6 times. So I think I know something about airports. I believe that the perspective gained as a business traveler within these past 40 years could be a valuable asset as if I remember the Airport Commission. I know good when I see it, and I want to find ways to further improve our airline service so our airport can be great. You know, I really do think we have a great airport right now. It's a beautiful airport. It's exceptionally managed. I'm so impressed with Hazel Johns and her staff. I'm very pleased to see that we announced that Frontier is coming to fly in and out of Denver and Sun Country to Minneapolis. Do believe, though, I'd like another legacy airline in here for the business traveler. So on 1 week's notice, you can still get a decent fare. I believe that the addition of a business person to the commission who's active in the Santa Barbara tech scene can bring a perspective that could further improve airline service to Santa Barbara. If appointed to the commission, I would use my connections gained over the years at United Airlines to incrementally improve their service to LAX, SFO, and Denver. United is currently flying CRJ 200s to LAX in Denver. You all know what I'm talking about, that narrow tube where you just don't have room to even turn around, right? They do have the Embraer 175 flying to San Francisco now, so that's been an improvement. Be great if we could get more Embraer 175s for improved space and comfort to both LAX and to Denver. I would actively campaign for Southwest Airlines to begin flights to San Jose, Oakland, and Las Vegas. These are all-weather airports that will facilitate flights to the Bay Area and East Coast that tech executives have told me they really need. So from that meeting with Ms. Johns and Mr. Shore, I volunteered to begin surveying small business owners, tech companies. If we could have additional service in Santa Barbara, where would you like to go? And the tech people all raise their hands. We need San Jose. Okay, that's where we go. We go to Stanford and San Jose, Silicon Valley. The academics said, well, we go to Stanford and we go to Berkeley. We need Oakland. Okay, and I'm picking Las Vegas because in my business at GI Logic, I have to get to the East Coast to major medical centers like Duke University. And when you're dealing with surgeons, it's very difficult. You'll make your appointment with the surgical team at 8:30 in the morning, but if there's an emergency, they don't come out of the operating room till noon. So you have to book your flight at 4 p.m. Try to get back to Santa Barbara at 4 p.m. You're lucky to get that last flight out of LAX or SFO at 10:40 at night. We can do better. I'd also like to get Delta back to Salt Lake City. Having spent my entire career in pharmaceuticals and biotech companies, software, now a medical device sensor startup, my travel experience could be worthwhile meeting with airline executives to improve service to Santa Barbara. One key area that I would highlight to the airline industry is our vibrant tech companies here and new ones being hatched out of UCSB. These companies need improved airline service to continue to headquarter here. I would demonstrate the calculus people factor when they decide to fly, use Surf Air, drive, or take Amtrak to Burbank Airport to get Southwest out of Burbank, or take the Santa Barbara Airbus to LAX. One of the things we discuss at the airport commission meetings is the leakage. If we could control the leakage to these outside airports, Southwest would be very profitable in this town, and they would not compete head-on with United or American. Adding Southwest Airlines to Santa Barbara will also help parents visiting their kids attending UCSB and Santa Barbara City College. For residents like myself, visiting my son in San Francisco versus taking that 6-hour drive. It will help attract and retain tech businesses in Santa Barbara. Employees require affordable and excellent airline service. Lower fares and increased airport connections will attract more tourists who will help our local business prosper in the years ahead. Think of me as your improved SBA access candidate for airport commissioner. I thank you for your consideration.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. I don't see any lights.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Airport Commission?
You skipped right over the architects. Sorry.
Well, let's do Access Advisory Committee and then we'll come back. So, Access Advisory, come on.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of council. My name is Janice Rodriguez, and I'm applying for the Access Advisory Committee. I know that it started as an ad hoc committee to assist the Architectural Board of Review and Historic Landmark in reviewing public projects, and it became clear that a standing committee was necessary to assist and advise staff on matters pertaining to accessibility. 5 years ago, my son was injured in a car accident, sustained a spinal cord injury, and now is considered to have quadriplegia. Sean, my son Sean's with me. Together, we applied for and received over $40,000 in grants for things that aren't covered by insurance when someone has a disability. We successfully campaigned when we were in Georgia at the spinal cord injury. We lived there for 2 years. There was an initiative up for vote where people that were convicted of reckless driving or drunk driving paid a fine that went into a crime victims trust fund. Again, to help people with disabilities pay for things not covered by insurance. I'm also a peer support mentor for the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, where I mentor parents of newly injured people with spinal cord injury. And while we were at the Shepherd Center in Atlanta, which is a spinal cord injury rehab hospital, I started a group for family members to get out of the hospital, take care of themselves, be able to walk and share feelings, and at the same time enjoying an activity that's good for them. I also work for the Housing Authority, City of Santa Barbara, in the Resident Services Department, and I got to work on the Grace Village project, and we're excited for the scoop on Johnson Court. But I'd like to be appointed to the advisory committee to help ensure equal access for people with disabilities. I live on the west side, and there are lots of curb cuts and things that haven't, part of the sidewalk will have access and other parts won't, and requiring people with disabilities to have to pull into the street and then up someone's driveway and back up onto the sidewalk. So I'd like to help work on projects that ensure equal access for people with disabilities, for people with strollers, for people that just need a little extra help, and ramps and things like that are vital, and to help them enjoy the natural areas that most people here in Santa Barbara can enjoy.
Did you say Janice Rodriguez?
Yes.
Okay. I don't see your name on the list, so we're going to ask Ms. Estrada if she's on there. Okay. But thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Okay. Thank you. You too. Okay. So you're here for Architectural Board of Review. Come on up. Are you Laura Lee by any chance?
I'm Laura Lee, yes. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Mayor and council members, for having me here. I'm Laura Lee Boyle, architect, and I'm excited about spending the 10 to 14 hours needed to be one of the architects on the board. And there are amazing people here tonight, so I'm just happy to be here and able to jump in. I'm pretty literal about answering questions, so yes, I can devote the 10 to 14 hours needed and more if necessary to answer questions. What do I know about ABR? Well, it's a 7-member board reviewing building grading permits as well as exterior colors. What are they reviewing? To make sure that the high standards of materials of construction are maintained in the beautiful city of Santa Barbara, as well as meeting all of the architectural guideline goals. I think the main thing that they are reviewing is the project or development compatible with its neighborhood or context, character, style, what's the scale, the massing, the height? Does it work with its surroundings? Has it maintained the ocean views, the mountain views, and met the open space and landscape requirements? Were you answering a question? You look like you were going to ask a question. Skills. 25 years licensed architect. Worked on many project types, commercial, schools, multifamily, residential. Been a partner in a firm, had my own firm, worked for large firms, quick at decisions, reviewed a lot of documents. I guess my best asset is being able to review a set of documents quickly and efficiently to get the big picture as well as the details, and be able to offer hopefully win-win solutions to the entire project team. Let's see, why ABR? Because I want to jump in and I want to help. I want to help preserve, enhance, and evolve the city's great architecture. That's what I'm about. That's what I've been about for many years. Let's see, I've been a review architect on a small homeowners association, so I understand the dynamics of opinions and board, and I think I can be a collaborative liaison on the board. I play well in the sandbox. Let's see, what else? What are my interests? I want to be the friendly face on the board. I feel like, at least my experience going to the board, it seems uptight. I would hope that it could be more relaxed and educational. I don't see why it can't be. So that's my goal, be the friendly face, and of course, hope that it's fair and implement policies so that every project is the same review. So thank you very much.
Well said. Thank you. Ms. Snedden, question?
I see you work currently for AB.
I'm actually currently at Appleton.
Okay.
So
have
yeah,
you
there's been
previously
a
worked on
change.
any projects with the city? Or?
I did, yes. With AB,
Yes.
I took Oasis Inn and Suites through the whole process, through show and concept. And I've also been through HLC with another owner.
So you have experience working through
the process. Yes, on the other side, yes. But I am newer to Santa Barbara, 3 years.
Thank you.
Came from Davis, another
Okay.
small town.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions for Ms. Boyle? No. Thank you. Thanks for waiting all this time, too.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, take care. Well, that's it. And Mr. Casey, is this the final session that we have? So anyone out there in TV land, if you missed interviewing, we cannot appoint you. You have to apply and get qualified, and then you have to be interviewed. So, and then the other thing I always tell people that if you don't get on the first time, try again, and also give a first, second, and third preference, because you might not get your first one, but if you just want to be of service to the city, you can get in somewhere. But someone like yourself, ma'am, you're a licensed architect, yeah. I'd like to adjourn the meeting today in honor of, first of all, Joanne Keynes. She was the beloved principal at LaCoumbre Junior High School, and she would take care of the entire family. That campus is like a community center, and if she had a parent come in, they would have activities for the little kids, and she just recognized that the family is a unit, and she would have activities for everyone, and just a real loss. Ken Williams, as Councilmember Friedman said before, a social worker with the county focusing on homelessness, and when I was a reporter back in the day, he would take me to meet some of the people on the street, and I'll never forget those early mornings meeting women in their 70s sitting on a bench, and they're homeless, and everybody loved to see him coming. Ken, help me with this, help me with that. I can't believe he's gone. So sorry we've lost those two wonderful people. We'll adjourn in their honor. Thank you.